We're going to call roll, and please understand anyone in the hallway or outside the building will not be excluded. We'll try to do it in an organized fashion for anyone that wants to provide input tonight. So if you'll bear with us, because we are in a smaller room and we do have a number of topics that a lot of people are interested in, we'll get started. Thank you. Mr. Ayton, will you please call the roll?
Certainly. Councilmember Green.
Here.
Councilmember Edwards.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves.
Here.
Councilmember Monsiváis.
Here.
Councilmember Peters.
Here.
Councilmember Garcia.
Here.
Mayor Castillo.
Here. Councilmember Monsiváis.
Thank you, Lord, for this day, and thank you for blessing members of this council and city staff with the ability to serve the members of our community, and bless our veterans and the members of our armed forces. Bless the members of our police department and our fire department, and in your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Sorry, everybody that's here for the library, if y'all would please come up. You bet. You do? You'll have to stand up on your tippy toes.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gretchen Pruitt. I'm the library director at the New Braunfels Public Library, and it's my honor to introduce to you some of my friends and foundation members and library advisory board members. First of all, if you're on the library advisory board or have ever been on the library advisory board, raise your hand. Thank you so much for your service. Everyone who's a member of the foundation or has ever been a member of the foundation, raise your hands. Thank you so much. And everyone who's a friend of the library, please raise your hand. We brought quite a few friends here tonight, as you can see. Everyone's a friend of the library.
I have a proclamation for y'all. Whereas public libraries have historically served our nation's great equalizers of knowledge by providing free access to all and are a cornerstone for our democratic society, enabling individuals to make informed decisions about their self-governance. And whereas in the world undergoing constant change, public libraries provide enduring connections to the past and future of our communities, nations, and civilizations. And whereas the ability to read and process information in a variety of formats is a basic survival skill in our global information society, and whereas libraries offer story times and summer reading programs to encourage children to begin a habit of reading that will serve to benefit their personal and professional lives, and whereas public libraries support a competitive workforce with basic literacy programs, computers, and other resources to help children and adults learn to find, evaluate, and use information they need for their jobs, health, education, and other needs, and whereas public libraries and professional librarians work to meet the changing needs of their users, including building collections, expanding outreach services, and increasing programming, and whereas the City of New Braunfels Public Library serves 58,000 library card holders 7 days a week throughout the year, both in person and virtually, through the main facility and the Westside Community Center branch. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Baron Castile, Mayor of the City of New Braunfels, Texas, do proclaim the month of February 2016 as Love My Library Month, and I urge everyone to visit our public library and discover the wealth of resources waiting for them in our unique and wonderful institution. In fact, I want to say that that was my first even knowledge of the City of New Braunfels, was the fact that I went to the Dittlinger Memorial Library and spent many a day, many an evening in our library, and this one is far more attractive and far more user-friendly, especially to these two down here. So thank y'all.
As part of Love My Library Month, we want to make sure everybody can love the library. So I want to remind you all that if you bring us food for either animals that go to the Humane Society of New Braunfels or human food, a non-perishable and unexpired food, we will waive $2 in fines for every item that you bring us in the month of February. And you're going to find out there's a lot of reasons to love your library. So I hope to see you all in February. We broke those fingers right off. Nobody can shush anymore. It's a vibrant, thriving place, and I want to see you all there. Thank you.
Okay, we have a vehicle for hire ordinance update. Mr. Ayton?
Thank you. Good evening, Council. I have an update for you on the Vehicle for Hire Ordinance update. Back in, I believe, November, City Council was discussing some options with the Vehicle for Hire Ordinance in general, but also specifically about transportation network companies, such as Uber and Lyft and others. And we'll talk about some of those options dealing with vehicles for hire and what that means. You have a presentation in front of you. It's also up here on the screen. Chapter 138 in the Code of Ordinances deals with vehicles for hire. There's 7 articles within that chapter. We're going to look at or focus on the first 2, actually. The first one, Article 1, is about taxis. There's also a section in there about pedicabs. There used to be a pedicab business in town at that time. So, and then Article 2, the plan is to make it specifically, at this time, there's nothing in Article 2. It is reserved. But the plan is to make Article 2 about transportation network companies, or TNCs. As you can see, also, the other articles deal with vehicles of some type and how they are for hire in different ways. And that's why they have different articles or sections about those. A little history about Article 1 and taxis. The taxi ordinance was last updated just a couple of years ago. Prior to that, it was updated in 2001 and in 1950. So it took a little while. The 2014 updates, if for those of y'all, most of y'all were here at least, if not all of you, in 2014 when that was updated, just almost 2 years ago. Some of the things that were updated were fees. The fees schedule, essentially, there's 3 things that are turned in with a taxi cab application. One is, well, there's 3 processes. One is the overall application to be a taxi cab company in town. So the fee on that there was really no fee with that, and now there is. There's also a fee every time a vehicle is inspected to meet the criteria and the checklist to be a taxi cab. And then the third part is the background check on the drivers. So everyone that applies to be a driver of any of those licensed vehicles by that permitted company. And so there's a $10 background check on that. Also, some of the other things that were updated and expanded, like the definitions, some of the deadlines were modified to avoid some last-minute applicants. And then the terminal was added to the ordinance in 2014 so that we had local taxi cab businesses in town. Some of the proposed changes that we're looking at, obviously, we're expanding this look at beyond just things like TNCs, Uber and Lyft and all that. We're also looking at taxi cabs in general to provide a little less of regulation. We're not entirely sure how that will be, but some of the things we're looking at is modifying or even decreasing the checklist for taxi cabs and what their inspection list is for when the fire marshal's office conducts those inspections. And there's also one of the things we discussed is the annual permit cycle. Currently, taxi cabs have a permit which starts January 1 at midnight, which is obviously a very important time for taxi cabs to be operating, and then they go through December 31st. And so what we have seen in the past is a lot of taxi cab applicants coming in on December 30th and 31st saying, here's my application and my drivers and everything, and please, get this approved for me as soon as possible. And that has been, that was an issue, and so that's why we modified the deadlines a couple of years ago. So one of the things we're thinking about possibly doing, and it kind of makes sense, is we could have those, instead of a January through December, it'll just be a 12-month period. So for whenever that cab company or whatever comes online, so if they applied into September, then their permit would go for 12 months through that, and not necessarily January through December. Another update on taxis, by the way. Last year we had 4 cab companies in town. This year we have 2 permitted taxi cab companies in town, NB Transportation and Comal Cabs. Okay. Article 2 on the Transportation Network Companies, or TNCs. A TNC is when paying passengers connect with drivers via a website or a mobile app to provide that transportation with that driver's personal vehicle, such as Uber and Lyft, and there's also other companies out there that I found. I don't know much about either, but I think their business model is perhaps similar: Sidecar, Wings, Taxify, and so on. Sometimes they're referred to as ride-sharing or ride-share companies, and that is a little different. Basically, what I found about ride-sharing is it's a lot like carpooling, where the driver and the passenger are going to the same place. So Transportation Network Companies is somewhat of a better fit or moniker for that. Let's see what else. We researched some other cities while we're trying to develop and craft this ordinance. Obviously it's in the news a lot about Uber and Lyft and how these companies are trying to be approved in various cities, not just in our region and up and down the I-35 corridor, but also several cities, in particular in Texas. So we're looking at some of the ordinances that are most recently passed. San Marcos had one not too long ago. More recently, College Station did. I think Beaumont, and anyway, there's several that we're looking at, and then we're also trying to merge that with our current code so that it is not too entirely different from the taxi cab portion of the ordinance. So some of the proposed amendments that we are doing, obviously, is some administrative additions, and that mainly involves what types of fees will be assessed. It's a little bit of a different structure than the taxi cabs, although we do still want that to be similar. By definition, the Ubers are vehicles for hire, just like a taxi. So there's a lot of similarities, but obviously there's some differences there, especially with their business models. We also added, adding and defining things a little differently. There's just not, they're not completely apples to apples, and so that's some of the administrative additions. We're still identifying how the annual permit will be processed, not just a 12-month issuance, but also who will pay for that. Will Uber pay? The idea is posed, will Uber, for example, come in and pay that one-time taxi, if you will, application or TNC application, and then each driver has to come in and get their own background check with the city. Some cities do that, some don't, and that's what some of the, even in today's headlines I've read, where that's what a lot of cities are dealing with often, is they are talking to the cities and Uber and Lyft and all that. They're talking about who should. It's about accountability and how those drivers will be permitted and or regulated. Of course, every driver, of course, would have insurance. The vehicle's inspected perhaps also by the fire marshal's office with the background checks. And then, of course, if you're familiar with Uber, they also have to have driver identification and keep records and logs, and all that's digital via the app. Yes, sir.
Do we have all of those requirements for cabs as well?
Very similar, yes. We're trying to make sure that they do match up.
Applications, logs, those kind of things?
Yes. Yes, the insurance for cabs is, I believe, a slightly different,
Well,
but
it's
yes, they
there.
have to have insurance. In fact, Uber itself requires that all their vehicles, of course, have the state inspection. They have to have 4 doors, so you can't have a motorcycle or something like that. And then also that your vehicle model, I believe, be a 2002 model or newer. So,
What is the annual permit fee for a taxi cab, for a cab company run?
I believe it is $150
Okay,
a year.
thank you.
Per cab, right?
No,
Per company?
per company is $150. And then per vehicle for that company is a $50 vehicle inspection fee, and then a $10 driver background fee, check.
And is all of that annual?
Yes. As far as prohibitions go, of course, no drugs or alcohol for TNC drivers. No street hails. I think a lot of people have that concept, like in larger cities, in New York City and things like that, where you can hail the cab, and that's not what we have here. You activate that essentially with an app. Similar to our taxi cabs, we also don't allow for non-permitted vehicles to pick you up here in town. And what I mean by that is yellow cab is not a permitted taxi in New Braunfels. It is in San Antonio. So yellow cab can't come here and pick you up, according to the ordinance. But they can take you from San Antonio and drop you off here. And of course, the last thing on the list is, of course, they don't accept cash payments with Uber and things like that. Those types of business models. Okay. A couple similarities. Obviously, there are similarities between taxis and TNCs. The passengers are paying for the transportation. You need a city permit to pick up a passenger, which I just mentioned. It's a 12-month operating permit whenever that is activated. And then there will be fees. Not sure how those will all be comparable. We're still discussing that and how that'll work. And as I also mentioned earlier, the challenges really are about accountability. What type of driver background checks? Uber does a background check on their drivers. It's not the exact same driver background check that we do. In some ways, it's more expansive than ours, but it's not necessarily the same as ours either.
Patrick, I wanted to ask something about that. I
Yes.
know a lot of the cities are talking with Uber about background checks or not. Uber doesn't like for the cities to do the background check. Have we met with any representatives of TNCs?
Yes, sir. Met with the Texas policy manager, I believe, for Uber. And so he's based out of Austin. And he's going to actually be here tomorrow for the meeting. So, but that's one of the things we discussed. They are, obviously, Uber is its own very rapidly growing company, and they are protective of their information, of their proprietary type of information. And so one of their concerns is why would we give you all of our drivers' information? Because our competitors, knowing that we're a governmental entity, could ask us for their drivers' information. maybe, whatever proprietary issues that might cause, and I think that's one of their concerns, is those kind of things. And I think that's some of the issues that they're facing in other cities. Vehicle inspections, if a vehicle is inspected by the city and then it's also inspected, basically the concern, one of the main concerns is if it's inspected and they're approved to be an Uber driver and that's an approved Uber vehicle or Lyft vehicle or whatever, then can they still be one, well, I guess if they got a new vehicle 6 months later, they have to come back in and get another inspection and pay for that. You know, some of those pitfalls there, and a lot of unanswered questions. And of course, our auditing capability as the city, as we are actually would be regulating them in some form, and if we'd have access to their driving records and those types of documents. So those are a lot of the questions that we're looking at and still trying to work on and work through as the ordinance is being crafted. We are having conversations with taxi cab companies and representatives of TNCs, such as the gentleman from Uber. So I want to make sure you all know, and the audience at home know, that we are having a public forum tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. in this room. And it is essentially for taxi cab companies, local ones in particular, and for Uber and Lyft and TNCs, and anyone interested in those or possibly becoming one, to come and ask questions, and hopefully that input will help us craft the ordinance as well. And then eventually we'll bring back a better ordinance for you all, for your approval.
Any further questions of council? No. Okay, with all presentations, anyone wishing to address this item, you're welcome to step up to the podium, state your name and address. Please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, we'll move on to our next presentation. Police Technology, Chief Weibert.
Geez, you can hardly recognize me.
Good evening. The police department has 2 technology projects that have been in the works for several months. And before we roll them out, we would like to do a quick demonstration. The projects are CopLogic, which is a system to file police reports online. And then the next one is Analytics, which is an online interactive crime mapping program that will be available to the general public. And so the 2 people who chaired these projects are here tonight to do the demo. I've been promised less than 5 minutes each. And so Captain John McDonald is here to demonstrate CopLogic.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. Just wanted to show you this addition that we've added. We currently have an online reporting system that we utilize through the City of New Braunfels website. This is an enhancement that we have made for our citizens. It will allow us to serve our citizens in a better capacity, hopefully reduce waiting time for citizens receiving police services. We're allowed to expand the call criteria in which we will allow our citizens to take these types of reports. A lot of the things that we see sometimes don't necessarily require a police officer in person, but because of the limitations of our current homegrown system that we're using, which is web-based, we'd be limited. We'd have to dispatch an officer out there. So this allows a platform for them to report crimes, and the criteria are defined by the categories that you're seeing right there. These are the areas that we've defined that we think would be the most impactful for the services and to speed up what the citizens are looking for. The best example I can give you is in the summertime, we see a lot of people reporting lost property, lost cell phones, lost wallets, things of that nature. This provides a mechanism for them to report those types of incidents and receive a case number in a relatively short amount of time, which all they're looking for in those instances is to report it to their insurance company. So when we hit the switch, basically, the citizens will see this when they log on to the police department's homepage. They'll click a button where it says submit a report. It'll take them to this page right here. If the criteria there you see, if it falls under that, the type of report that they are wanting to report to us, they can start the online report process. Because we haven't officially flipped the switch in the background on the IT side, I cannot run you all the way through it, because otherwise it would become live and people would start using it, and we're not to that point yet. We're about a week or two out from that point. So the best one I can give you, let's say that a person wants to do a lost property report. They click on the lost property, hit start report. It takes them through the process, and up here at the top where it says original, it tells them this is the first report that's been filed of this incident. They would hit continue, and it basically allows them to fill out the information. If you look at the top part of the browser where it says lost property, each one of these marks up here where it says like yourself, incident, property, and narrative review, those are all tabs that the citizen would fill out. Once they complete that report, it sends it to an officer that would basically just verify the information, meaning that it meets the criteria for the online reporting system, and then that officer will send it to his supervisor for review, and then immediately it would get pushed into our record management system. The current process we have now allows for the citizen to go to our city website and start a report, but what happens is, because it's homegrown, it's not really an actual software, it gets emailed to that officer at the front desk, then he has to rebuild that report from scratch, enter everything again into our record management system, get a case number, and then eventually get a hold of the citizen who made the report. This system here will speed up that entire process where the citizen, number one, isn't going to have to wait a long period of time to get a case number. Number two, the types of reports that we see coming into the lobby, sometimes, especially on evening shift, they're waiting up to 2 hours just to talk to a police officer because of call volume and no one's available. We'll have a kiosk in the lobby where they can, if they don't have computer access, they can do it there. The system also affords the opportunity to upload documents as well. If they have a document that would go with their report, they can upload the document as well.
As far as, just a quick question, the customer service side of it goes, if someone's entering their information, is there a number they can call, say if they run into some technical difficulties, or they don't know? what
The
they're
number
doing?
that they would call is the regular police department dispatch number, and a dispatcher can walk them through the report if they're having difficult with that process. For the most part, it's self-explanatory. If it's highlighted in red, it tells you. If you go through and let's say you forget to put something in and you hit continue, it will basically kick you back to this screen and tell you you forgot to put in your address, or your email address is not correct, or did not match, and has them fix it and continues through there. Once we have this up and running for a couple of weeks and we got any wrinkles ironed out, we are going to convert it to a Spanish platform so that we can work on the Spanish angle as well to serve the citizens who would want to make a report in Spanish as well.
Is there an other category, or if you don't have one of those items listed on the first page, what do they do to file a report?
If these are just for online reports. If it's something other than this, then they would not be a candidate for an online report. They would see a police officer in person.
Okay, thank you.
John, I noticed that on that second page that you fill out, you have social security number, but up at the top you say social security number or driver's license. But in the body of the paper, you have social security number with a little red asterisk, which means required. You normally give or take social security numbers in something like this?
Yes, sir, we do. So all the blanks that you're seeing here require them to fill out. These are actually all the mandatory fields that our officers are required to fill out when they do a report, when they do the report themselves. And what that creates is it creates a standardization process for a data entry standards for our system, so that everybody is doing the same thing, the same nature of work. We're not getting one person that's maybe only getting an address and a name versus another officer who would be getting a name, date of birth, and social security. So it helps standardize the information that's going in to keep our data within our system clean.
Is this a public record?
Once the report comes through the system, it will be treated just like a police report. So it could be a matter of public record, correct?
With our social security numbers on that?
Yeah, but that gets removed.
That gets removed through redaction.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's something we deal with every single day. We have a records division that deals with redaction as far as open records goes.
Okay.
Are the asterisk fields required?
Yes, sir.
And what if someone doesn't have either a home or a mobile phone or doesn't have an email? Will it bounce it?
If
they
you do
don't?
not have an email, you would not be a good candidate, because what happens is once the system gives you a report number, it would email you the report number
Okay,
so that you don't have to call a police officer. If you don't have an email address, then the best way to handle is to have an officer in person.
well, okay, that's fine, but there are a number of people I know that have done away with their home phones, as an example. Is there a mechanism? so
If they
that-
would if they put their mobile phone where the home
Just
phone
put
is
it
as
in
well,
twice? Okay.
it'll count it.
And this
Right.
is a random question, but I've always wondered this. So some women tend to change our hair color all the time. I've always wondered, are we supposed to put in our current hair color or natural?
We'll go for the current color of the day.
The guess that we think it might still be the color of the day.
Color of the day.
Thanks.
Or the majority of what the color is.
Only you, Asia.
It would be nice to include like the dispatch number in the little highlighted area, because I think what the Mayor Pro Tem was saying was that it says social security number or driver's license number, but they're asking for both down there. So if it's both are required, it just seems a little bit confusing, their part.
Both are required, and then that's basically based on the data standards.
So you would remove the or.
You could, yeah, it'll take either one, the way the system goes through the process.
Any other questions? Next.
Okay, we've got one more, and Lieutenant John Wells is here to demonstrate analytics.
All right, good evening, Mayor, members of council. You'll see before you a public website that we are rolling out. We use Spillman Technologies as our records management system. Last year, Spillman offered this as a new tool that's available to us as well as the public, and basically it's crime analysis. So if you look at the top, there's a public website, www.raidsonline.com. Raids is spelled R-A-I-D-S. Anyone can access that from any computer or mobile phone that has internet access. We are not the only agency to do this. There's actually agencies all across the United States. So if you're traveling, you could potentially look up this same website and see if the area where you're going to actually has this service available as well if you want to see what's going on. So this is something that a few years ago we had a system available that did crime mapping that was available for the public. It was kind of tedious and wasn't very easy to use, as well as it cost us some additional funds out of our budget. This is a service that's provided to us as part of our annual maintenance fee, so we don't pay anything for it. It's just a tool that's added on to our Spillman system. So, and the basis of it is crime analysis. So every day, our system automatically uploads the daily police activity, specifically the police reports that are taken, not all the calls for service, but where we go and actually take a report for something, is uploaded to the website. Anyone can log into here, and you simply just can click on Texas, or actually it's a lot easier just to scroll in. And as you see, you start scrolling in, all these areas that have little badges are cities across the United States that have this same service that we do. Some of them are provided through Spillman, which is how we get ours. The other one is the company, which is actually Bear Analytics. If you notice the top left corner, Spillman partnered with them. Bear Analytics is actually a nationally known, or actually globally known, crime analysis company that they partnered with. So very, very well known for what they provide. So I'll keep zooming in until I get to where we are here in New Braunfels on our map, give it a few minutes to update. And you can see it provides us with some real-time data of what's going on in our community. So this is pretty exciting for us because we do get a lot of requests from the public through open records. Hey, what's going on in my neighborhood? I'm thinking about moving to town. Can I know what kind of crime is in the subdivision I'm going into? What kind of calls do you respond to? How many DWIs do you arrest? Things like that. And this is something that actually allows the public to look it up anytime they want. So another thing that's nice is that not only through the website can you do it, but there is an iPhone app. They're working on one for Android. But if you search Raids Online in your iTunes store, you can actually download the app off your phone. And when you bring it up, it actually uses your GPS location automatically to tell you what's going on around you. So if the public was to log in, you wanted to see what was going on around your house, you could go to this address bar in the top left corner. I'm going to use City Hall's address just as an example. And it's going to put this little bullseye right on top of City Hall. So if you were wondering what's going on around my house, you would put in your address, And then you'd get a good idea of, first of all, where you're at on the map as a reference point, and then what's going on around you. You can go down here on the left. If you look at the left side, we have date ranges. So the automatic default is the last month of activity. So you can see this is from 12/26 to 1/25 for what we're showing on the map. And I'm going to zoom back out so we get a better look. This can be predefined as activity that happened yesterday, and it'll update the last 3 days, week, 2 weeks, 28 days, 1 month, all the way up to a year, whatever you choose. Or you can go put your own dates in there if you want some specific dates. If you want to go back to a specific date in the calendar, and you want to know what happened on that specific date for some reason, you can put that date in as well. The next tab down is events, and this is basically what the calls are or what the reports are. So as you can see, there's only a few things selected here. You have the option to deselect and turn everything off, or you can do a select all. And let me go back up here and bring this out to 28 days. So this is the last 28 days worth of activity. And again, keep in mind, this is everything we respond to, from traffic accidents to drug arrests, DWIs, assaults, everything is there. There's even some other reports for non-criminal stuff. So if we go for child custody, some things that are not always non-criminal or miscellaneous, a lot of times we can turn those off. That takes a lot of things out. Traffic incidents are going to be crashes or anything, a vehicle blocking the roadway that we get dispatched to, power lines down, something like that that affects traffic. So I can turn those off. That takes a lot of things away. But just to kind of clean things up a little, I'm going to deselect again and then just pick a few things such as assault, some of our burglaries, thefts, motor vehicles, motor vehicles, DWIs. So again, you can see you can pick anything that you want. On each one of these things, for example, the little bag of money is a theft. If you click, it will give you some very basic information about the incident. First of all, the case number, what it was, theft of property, the date, the time. It gives you the block range of the address. It does not publicly put out the exact address of the incident. And then if you had put in an address like this one, it tells you how far away from your home or what address you put in. So this happened 2.5 miles from the city hall address that I put in. So if you needed any kind of information that's more specific, say you were interested in doing a public open records request, you would have a case number to be able to call about that if you had some kind of a vested interest in requesting that information. So there's a few other things that are available. The offenders right now is not working. That eventually will publish from DPS all the sex offenders in the area, which that is public information. Right now you can go to the DPS website and get that info. They're working on getting that turned on in analytics so that it would give another resource for any of those that live in our area. Any registered sex offenders would populate where they reside. Because again, that's public information as well. And then we have analytic layers. This is something neat. We call it a heat map. There's some other layers that are available on the police department side, but on the public side, if you were to turn this on, it would kind of give you an idea of what are called hotspots around town. And it's actually easier to see if you turn it off or turn it on and then deselect the comment. So you can see where we have a lot of activity in areas of town. And that, of course, will change based on what type of activity you select. Say you're only interested in accidents, if you're interested in where the vehicles are getting broken into, things like that, you can base it specifically on that. And here's an example. So traffic accidents, if I just turned on the traffic incidents only and then turned this on, told it to recalculate, and then went back and went deselect, you can see where some of our busiest areas are our major intersections. We've got 306, 46 and 35, and 725 by the PD. So that's all I have. Any questions specific that I can answer for you?
When will this be online?
It's actually up and running now.
It's up and running now.
Yes. So we are going to start putting some information out to the public about how to access it. We wanted to show it tonight first, but it is up and running, and it has information uploaded all the way back to January of 2015. So it's got 1 year's worth of data uploaded historically right now.
That's all. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As with any presentation, anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address. Please limit to 5 minutes or less.
Jim Waldman, 2324 Oak Willow. Just a quick question before they all leave. great presentation, bringing it up, but how far into the website do you have to dig to be able to put a report in? Is it going to be right on the homepage for the New Braunfels? So if you go to mbtexas.org, you can say, submit a police report, or do you have to dive in 5, 10 pages to go find this
For
thing?
the Citizens Online Report?
Yes.
So we did it really strategically, right? We were trying to see what the most obvious thing was, so when you open our homepage up, you'll see Chief Weibert's head. And right above his head says Start Online Report. Right there. Nice and simple. On the homepage, on the MBPD homepage. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, with that, Commissioner Shanafelt.
Good evening. My name is Jack Schonefeld. I live at 408 Las Bruces Boulevard. It's in the mailing district of Seguin, but I live in the county. I live halfway between Seguin and New Braunfels. I want to thank the mayor and the council for hearing me out tonight. I also the elected representative of Precinct 2 of Guadalupe County. Precinct 2, as you all know, is very close here, right down the road where your fire department is. That's where, on 46, is where Guadalupe County starts. I represent most of the city of Seguin, and all of 46 from Seguin to the east of, my precinct runs to the east of the Guadalupe River, all the way to Lake Dunlap, to the county line here at Comal, all the way to Hayes, all the way to the San Marcos River, then all the way back to Seguin. It's 135 square miles. I have approximately 33,000 people that I represent. I'm here tonight representing the folks that live in subdivisions, that live in feeder roads, that live off of farm to market roads, that intersect with Highway 46 south of New Braunfels inside the city limits. As you know, as I said, I represent all the folks all the way to Seguin. I'm basically the only representative they have if they live in the county. So I'm here tonight to make a presentation about a very popular subject, and that's lowering speed limits. I have a small plan here that I handed out to the council. It's basically a homemade plan. It's no engineering based on this. It's something that I've put together from listening to folks and my driving up and down this highway. I've been up and down it thousands of times. I've been driving this highway for 50 years. And recently, I've been, like I said, in Las Bruces for 15 years, so I've driven it daily. If you look there on the map, you'll see, let's just head south of the county line. You'll see that the speed limit starts out at 50 miles an hour, and then it drops to 45 actually it's 50 miles an hour through Singaholly and where Mary Boulevard comes in. And then it decreases going through Clear Springs, and it picks up again to 50. It picks up again to 55, and then to 60 on out in front of Avery Park, Guadacoma Estates, and the other subdivisions all the way to Seguin. I would propose here in this simple map, simple plan, that as we travel, say, south on 46, that you would have your staff look at, working with TxDOT, to reduce the speed limit to 45 miles an hour all the way to the entrance to Avery Park, or actually Guadacoma Estates, and then increasing it to 55 miles an hour on out, and this would be extended all the way to the city limits of Seguin, which you have no jurisdiction over, of course. Last week, I was successful with the city of Seguin in implementing, if you look down here on the bottom of the map, they are going to have their engineering folks look at lowering the speed limit to 45, out to 55 past Rudolph Road. This is, of course, all contingent upon TxDOT. It's their highway. But I was hoping that this council could take a hard look at this, instruct their engineering department and their staff to take a look at reducing the speed limit so our folks can get out safely out of these subdivisions. I'm the one, folks, that gets the calls for the traffic accidents when relatives are hurt. I'm the one to get the calls about the haul trucks. What can be done? What can be done, Mr. Schoenfeld? I'm not against haul trucks. We need those haul trucks. The county has its own haul trucks. We haul gravel. I have 135 miles of road that I maintain in Guadalupe County, so I need that gravel. I'm not against haul trucks. I just would like to see you slow them down a little bit, or see TxDOT slow them down. We have a lot of school buses that are on this road also, daily. That's truly just about all I have. I would hope that you would consider having your staff, well, there's one more thing. The mayor and I had a chat a couple of weeks ago, and this is not going to reduce the flow or the demand of traffic on 46. It's only going to slow the traffic down. The only way to reduce the traffic on 46 is, of course, to divert it. And we had chatted about extending 306 over to 758 and then bringing the traffic on in a little bit further down the road, which makes a lot of sense. But then again, you also explained to me that you have a community now over 50,000 folks. So now you have to pay for your own signaling. So if you want to say put a signal light up at 758 and 46, which I think is needed, you're going to spend a couple of $100,000 to do that. So I was hoping to persuade y'all to have your engineering staff look at this and have TxDOT, work with TxDOT to see if we can get these speed limits reduced.
Mr. Schoenfeld, are these traffic counts daily traffic counts?
Oh, yes. In fact, these are 2016 traffic counts.
Okay.
We have 29,000 cars there at the county line coming in on 46. We have 26,000 just a few blocks down the road around Singaholly. Out by past Clear Springs, we have 24,000 cars a day. And then closer to Seguin, we have 20,000. Now, keep in mind, these traffic counts aren't taken on Memorial Day weekend or 4th of July weekend or Labor Day weekend. As we all know, traffic really backs up there. But that's not going to be resolved until we can divert traffic. And perhaps in the future, I can work with the city about right away and so forth to get that 306 extended over to 758. Anybody else have a question?
Well, I would like to thank the commissioner, because the only way that we're going to be able to do that, to connect 46 to 35 and to alleviate 46, which is now done, because I don't know where the additional right-of-way is going to come from, except to divert it. I certainly appreciate the commissioner talking to us about that, because the only way we're going to get it done is through partnerships with Guadalupe County and Comal County.
And I was attempting to say that until I had a coughing fit, but I want to thank you since your precinct and my district overlap.
Yes, they do.
I
We
appreciate,
represent the same folks.
yes. So I get the calls too, and I appreciate you wanting to form a partnership to try to get those folks.
Well, I visited with I visited with TxDOT right after I was elected, and I've been waiting and waiting. Now, I understand there's a study that's been done. I haven't seen the results of it, but I think having your staff perhaps work with TxDOT, that would be a great help. I only have 2 miles of 46.
And we are working on some stoplights, because I'm sure you get those calls too from the Avery Park area asking about that. So we are working on it.
This is not on our agenda for an action item at this time, but we certainly appreciate the presentation. And do you have any other comments?
Mr.
Or?
Smith has a few notes to say.
Mayor and Council, thank you very much. My name is Steve Smith. I am president of the Comal Independent School District. I am not here in that capacity, though. Our board has not considered this issue. I'm here as the elected representative of District 1, which tracks up and down 46. We run 17 bus routes daily on 46, and 3 of those actually have to stop on 46. just because there's no place for the buses to turn around. So I've talked to our superintendent, I've talked to our director of transportation, and we're all very much in support of Mr. Schonefeld and what he's trying to do here. My neighbor was very nearly killed. She came out actually with very little done, but from looking at her car, I assure you, she was very much at risk by one of these fracking sand trucks that are going up and down the road. Since the 15 years we've had a home there, out 46, the nature of that traffic has changed dramatically, and the speed limit's only changed once, and that was way before the fracking trucks were there. So traffic is much greater than it was, and obviously much more dangerous given the size of the vehicles. I'd also ask for greater enforcement to the extent possible. I see enforcement, very little enforcement out in that area. So I may be inviting a ticket, but that's okay. I'll pay it to keep everyone safe. Again, thank you for what you do. I know the time is great that you spend on the city's business, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much.
I would envision if council were to do something, it would be through a resolution of support, since we would be talking to TxDOT. Okay. This is a presentation, and with all presentations, we invite comment. Anyone wishing to comment on this presentation, please step up to the podium, state your name and address. Please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, we'll move on to minutes. Thank you. We'll move on to minutes. Discuss and consider approval of the minutes of the special and regular meetings of January 11, 2016. Do I hear a motion?
Move for approval. Second.
I have a motion, a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Item 3, consent agenda. All items listed below are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the city.
Citizens communication.
Sorry, apologize. I took my glasses off. Citizens communication. This is a time for citizens to address city council on issues and items of concern not on this agenda. There will be no city council action at this time. Please understand, for us to converse with public regarding an item not on the agenda, it would be a violation of the Open Meetings Act, but this is your opportunity to discuss something not on this agenda with city council, and if you'd like to do so, please step up to the podium. Please state your name and address, and please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, moving on. Item 3, consent agenda. All items listed below are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the city council and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered as part of the normal order of business. I have had a request.
Yes, I'd like to pull D and E for discussion purposes.
D
And E.
and E. Are there any other items? Okay, item A, approval of a purchase with Time Warner Cable for dedicated internet access. Item B, approval of the renewal of a contract with ESRI for geographic information systems software and online GIS training. Item C, approval of the renewal of maintenance agreement for the Acela land and asset management software. Item F, approval of a resolution and submission of a grant application to the Community Outdoor Outreach Program grant from Texas Parks and Wildlife for up to $24,000 and authorizing the city manager to accept funds and to execute all contract documents associated with the grant if awarded. Item G, approval of the renewal of a contract with J.P. Morgan Chase for banking services. Item H, approval of the renewal of an annual contract with Verizon Wireless for broadband services through the DIR contract. Item I, ratification of the submission of a grant application to the Assistance Firefighters Grant Program under the Federal Emergency Management Agency and authorizing city manager to accept funds and execute all contract documents associated with the grant if awarded. Item J, approval of a resolution and the ratification of the submission of a grant application to the Texas Department of Transportation through the Texas Traffic Program Selective Traffic Enforcement Program and authorizing the city manager to accept funds and execute all contract documents associated with the grant if awarded. Item K, approval of a resolution setting a public hearing to amend the water and wastewater impact fees. Item L, approval of the first reading of an ordinance amending Ordinance 75-10 of the Code of Ordinances to install stop signs in the Rivercrest Heights, River Enclave, and Garden Park subdivisions. Item M, approval of the second and final reading of an ordinance amending sections 86-119 and 138-170 subsection I of the Code of Ordinances by increasing the river management fee from $1.50 to $2, and the appropriate budget amendment. Item N, approval of the second and final reading of an ordinance repealing Chapter 18, Article 5 of the Code of Ordinances and replacing it with a new Chapter 18, Article 5 that does not interfere with fire alarms or the fire department. Item O, approval of the second and final reading of an ordinance regarding the rezoning of approximately 8.5 acres, lots 1 through 20 of the Greenwald subdivision located west of the intersection of Cypress Bend Cove and Rolling Rapids Drive from R1 Single Family District to Greenwald Planned Development District with detailed plan. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. There is a second and final readings. Mr. Ayton, will you please call the roll?
Certainly. Councilmember Green.
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves.
Aye.
Councilmember Alfonso Baez.
Aye.
Councilmember Peters.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia.
Aye.
Mayor Castillo.
Aye. And the motion passes unanimously. Item D, approval of purchase from Dell Network Equipment through the State of Texas Department of Information Resource DIR contract.
Mr. Mayor, might I ask that both items be covered at the same time? I think they're related. The reason I asked this to be discussed is not that I have an issue with it, but it calls for expenditures of about $500,000 on various technology systems, installation and upgrades, and I thought, since these were not covered in our budget process, that in the spirit of our desire for transparency, that we have it discussed for us and for the public.
So for discussion purposes, if you'll hit on both, and then we'll take them up individually by vote.
Sure. Christy Ade, Assistant City Manager. Councilmember Peters sent me some questions this weekend about these two items, and I'm happy to address those for the entire council. Just basically a little bit of background first, and then I have people to talk about the details. These are not included in our budget, and as background, as you know, we reorganized a little bit this past year and took what was previously an IT division and made it a department. And as part of that, we hired our first IT director. And when Travis started in July of 2015, one of the first things I tasked him with was a review of all of our technology, our hardware, our software, our staffing, our network, everything, because we needed a really good, complete picture of our systems. We needed to know the age, the condition, and that's something that we haven't really had in the past. And so the purpose of that is, number one, so we can have that picture, but number two, so that ultimately we can create a technology strategic plan so that we can better plan for our technology investments over the long term rather than doing it sporadically or as things break, basically. So, and that will be brought to council eventually when we complete it. But we started talking about some of the findings just late last year, and we got to do a few things, some of the low-hanging fruit. As you know, we have a new spam filter that I think everybody's pretty happy with. We rearranged some staffing for the IT division, and so we've done a few of those things, but just recently, in the past month or 6 weeks or so, the IT director has come to us with some really serious concerns about the status of our network. As you know, in the background material that you've been provided, our systems are 10 years old, both the phone system and our network. Useful life on those kinds of things are 5 years. Cities often keep those around for 6 or 7. We're working on 10-year-old equipment, and we have serious concerns about the stability. And so what we discussed was an opportunity to utilize funding that was already in the budget for the phone system. As you recall, you included $100,000 in the budget for a phone system. Utilize that money, reprogram some money that we had for vehicles. We included a couple of pool vehicles in the budget. While those are important, technology is more important, and so we're reprogramming those costs and utilizing that funding to purchase a new network and the new phone system, which was already anticipated. The network was not anticipated. And we have negotiated a really favorable deal with both Dell and Cisco. It's a 0% financing deal. We will finance it over 4 years, and we will have to include the future year payments in future budgets. And I think that's what Mr. Peters wanted to make sure that we were public with and transparent with, that we will be buying it now, but it's financing it over 4 years. And I'm happy to answer any questions and
Thank you.
technical questions.
Any questions of council?
Is the phone system and the networking, is all of this going to be able to be transferred to the new building once it's done? Is there any cost savings of us delaying this until the new city hall is done and just doing it once there?
Some of it will stay here because, as you know, we're going to have staff staying here, right? We're not vacating this building. But once it is installed, we'll eventually, yes, be able to take it over to the new building or any other new buildings that we might build for Public Works, for example. But yes, it is transferable. And as far as cost savings, I will say that it is it would be very favorable to do it now because we are working with a 0% financing, and it is a deal that, and I'm going to ask Travis to talk about what you've negotiated for. Yes, from Dell and Cisco. Zero.
So with Dell and Cisco, they both offer those 0% financing options. As we look at the phone system, is it transferable? To go back to that question, absolutely. It's not a traditional phone system that small offices use. It's an IP-based system, so it runs over our data network. And so it runs basically off 2 servers that we don't even house. We won't house the new ones at City Hall. They'll be at our backup and primary data center locations. And so because of that, no matter where you go anywhere in the city, the phone, you unplug it from the wall, go to our new building, you plug it in, your number transfers with you. So you don't have to worry about saving any money by doing it one time later. It has to happen eventually, and with the age of the system, we have to reboot that equipment monthly, if not more often than that, and we're concerned every time we reboot it, is it going to come back up? We cannot find equipment to replace the servers that we have in place today because of their age. And so we have some concerns that if we lose our phone system, we lose a large portion of our ability to do business, and we want to make sure we eliminate that.
That's good to know, because I think a number of us on this side of the dais think that you'll be moving a lot quicker out of this building once the other building is open.
Hopefully, whatever we have in place today, we'll move without any issues at all.
And by the way, I appreciate it. I actually get citizens' emails now,
Good. That's the whole point.
as opposed to having to hunt and find them in a spam filter. So thank you. It is working.
Great.
Mayor and Council, I would like to add that Christie talked to you about the reorganization within the city and the conversion of the division into a department, but bringing on an IT director has helped this organization tremendously. You heard just one presentation today about our reliance on technology. PD is just one of those departments that rely upon our technology, and having Travis and his expertise at the table has proved to be, it was absolutely the right move to be able to do what we're doing. However, we are discovering things that we should have been investing in all along, and so this is one of those things that we should have invested previous to this. So really, the need is now, because we are concerned about the integrity of the system.
Any other questions? Do I hear a motion?
Move for approval?
Second.
Hi, I have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address. Please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that,
For both items, correct?
no, I'm doing each item individually.
Each one.
So this is D?
This is D. All those in favor, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Item E, approval of a purchase from Cisco for a voice-over internet protocol communication system through a State of Texas Department of Information Resource contract and appropriate budget amendment. And we've heard that discussion already. Does anybody have any other questions of this item? And do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, and please limit to 5 minutes or less. And with that, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Item A. First off, before I read this item, I'd like to let everyone know that we have moved this item because we know that there's a significant amount of interest in this item, from item J to item A. And with that, public hearing and approval of the proposed Veramende School Sector Plan with the Veramende Water Improvement District encompassing approximately 19.78 acres out of the Juan Martin de Verminde Survey, number 2, abstract 3, located at the terminus of Oak Run Parkway, Verminde School Sector Plan.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Before we get,
Yes, yes,
we get started, I think I'm going to hear a motion.
Well, Mayor, I'd like to make some introductory remarks with a motion. Last Tuesday evening, Councilmember Peters had a very nice public forum, well-attended, on the subject of Verminde. It was a general conversation about Verminde, but a lot of the people in the audience were from the Oak Run subdivision who had a lot of issues and concerns that they wished to express. They did to some degree at that particular time, but as City Manager Camareno realized and publicly mentioned there, that it was probably good that we have some separate type of meeting to hear those expressions of concerns, suggestions, ideas. And so I'd like to tell you that the city has been meeting with your HOA and some of your residents even before that public forum and after, even as of today at 11 o'clock. There was a 2-hour meeting between staff and members of the HOA and of the residents. At that meeting, it's my understanding, because I had to leave early to go to San Antonio, but it's my understanding that a public hearing has been set for February the 4th. That's a Thursday, February the 4th at 6 p.m. at Oak Run Middle School. This is, you know, there are a lot of people who had a lot of ideas, concerns, suggestions, and they want to express that. And we said that we would do that, though we hadn't had the time frame to do it up until that particular point. Since this item is on the agenda this evening, I'm making a motion that we postpone this item until the next council meeting, February the 8th. That would give us time to hear the residents in this public hearing, maybe offer solutions, meeting of the minds, and then come on February the 8th for further discussion and resolution at that time of how we would go as a council on this. I would just hasten to say that I highly encourage my colleagues on the dais to please be in attendance at that February 4th meeting, if at all possible, because I think then you would hear a lot more of expanded explanations on both sides of the issue. But again, I'd like to put forth a motion to have this postponed until February the 8th at that council meeting.
Second.
I got a motion and a second, and again, we moved this to item 4A so that the residents of Oak Run could be here. We are not going to limit discussion. You're going to be entitled to get up and speak. We don't do that here. And yeah, it's postponed to the 8th, and the meeting will be the 8th here, regular.
The meeting's on the 4th.
It's postponed to the 8th, this item.
Well, if council passes.
If council passes, it's postponed to the 8th, and the public meeting will be at Oak Run. NBISD has offered Oak Run School, which is fortunately close to many of the people that will be interested. It'll begin at 6 p.m. And it'll begin at 6 p.m. on the 4th, February the 4th, at Oak Run School. And the postponement motion is to postpone it until February the 8th. So anybody have any questions regarding that? Council?
Nope.
And if anybody wishes to address this item, it's here before us, but we have a motion to postpone, and also we've already set up that public meeting at 6 p.m., and we will continue to meet. We have another meeting scheduled sometime this week, on Wednesday,
Correct.
where NBISD is going to come in. We're trying to get NBISD as well as staff is fully aware of the questions and concerns, so we can address those items at that meeting on the 4th.
That's correct. And Mayor, and also NBISD will also be involved in the February 4th public meeting at Oak Run Middle School in the cafeteria, so please use the exterior doors to the cafeteria to enter the school, okay?
On behalf of the residents residents of Oak Run at large, as well as
Harry,
homeowners.
introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, sir. Sorry about that. Harry Bowers, 432 Oak Trace. On behalf of the residents of large at Oak Run and a lot of our leadership in the community, and as well as the Homeowners Association, we'd like to thank council for taking the time to consider postponing this to the 8th, so all the parties involved can try to come to some resolutions for the betterment of the city at large. So we'd like to say thank you. However, I would like to ask those in attendance tonight that are from Oak Run if they'd be kind enough to raise their hands so the city can see who was here for that purpose there. Not as tall as the mayor, but I do take that. So.
While the video, those at home are watching, they can't see, but everybody in the building raised their hand, with the exception of staff.
Thank you.
Again, anyone else wishing to address this item? Okay, with that, we have a motion to postpone till February the 8th. And again, council will be invited, all of council to attend, because it will be posted the February 4th meeting, 6 p.m. at Oak Run, and it's open to the public. So with that, we have a motion to postpone. All those in favor of the postponement, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you all for attending.
Mayor, if I may, I just want to make sure that I clarify that the public meeting on February the 4th it will not be a meeting whereby the council will take action that evening. They're invited to attend to hear the discussion. The action will be taken by the council on February the 8th. Okay?
Very good.
And with that, we're going to take just a short break to allow people to exit. Okay, we're back.
Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, we've got some guests that's traveled a long, long way, and it's an issue that's really at all of our hearts, and I'd like to move that we take this agenda item, which is 4M, if we could move it up and help our guests out. I'd be pleasured if the council would approve that motion.
Sir, we have a motion to take item 4M out of order. All those in favor, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. Okay, we'll move on with item M. Discuss and consider approval of the waiver of related, Discuss and consider approval of a waiver of related permitting and plan review fees associated with the development of the San Antonio Food Bank addressed at 1620 South Seguin Avenue.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The San Antonio Food Bank is planning to construct an almost 27,000 square foot structure on Farm to Market 725, just north of the police station. Due to their not-for-profit status, the food bank is requesting a waiver from building permit-related fees with the city of New Braunfels. This includes over $13,000 in building permits, plan review fees, $21,595 in roadway impact fees, and $9 in health plan review fees. They are not requesting a waiver from the annual health inspection fee, which is $18 for nonprofits. Staff is not opposed to the request. Representatives from the food bank are present to discuss their request. And with that.
Do I hear a motion?
Move for approval. Second.
We have a motion for approval of this item. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address. Please limit to 5 minutes or less.
Mayor, City Council, Eric Cooper, President and CEO of your San Antonio Food Bank. Excited just to share with you our architect's renderings of your New Braunfels Food Bank. As mentioned, will be constructed on Seguin Avenue, just under 28,000 square feet. It will have a full-service kitchen, a small community garden with some edible landscape, and just be a dynamic facility to be able to serve those needing resources and then engaging the community that wants to give resources. We continue to see about 1,200 households per month at the kitchen table at the marketplace. Once this is built, the kitchen table at the marketplace will close and the kitchen table will move into the New Braunfels Food Bank. So it will also be a cross-dock operation for us where our trucks, as they're bringing food up into the community, our local partner agencies will pick up from the facility there rather than traveling all the way to San Antonio to pick up their food. We'll be well-positioned in times of disaster, in that the full-service commercial kitchen will bring some of our culinary arts training programs to the community. So those that are served that are unemployed will be able to go through their culinary training here versus traveling again all the way to San Antonio. But as you may be aware, during the recent floods, we're the food solution for the American Red Cross. And so all the hot meals that were prepared for disaster victims were coming out of San Antonio and trucked up. We'll be able to be much more responsive with the kitchen on site. We just appreciate the consideration of waiving those fees. The total project is $6 million. We are about halfway there, so we have another $3 million to raise. About $4.5 million of that is coming from outside of, or at least is strategically being requested outside of the community. And those dollars, the first thing they ask is, what is the local community giving? And so if you decide to waive those fees, that adds a nice brag for us to those donors that the city has stepped up and waived those fees as an investment. That roughly $50,000 in fees is a part of that $6 million project. So every penny saved is a penny raised. But I'd be happy to ask or answer any specific questions regarding the facility.
Well, I have a warning and a question.
Yes, sir.
The warning is, you said edible landscaping. We have a lot of deer. They'll be very happy.
And they are in that area.
Yes.
The question, I guess really for Chris, on a nonprofit like this, there's a lot of delivery here. Is this been done in the past as far as the road impact fee is concerned on nonprofit? Just a simple question.
Gosh, ecstatic. Yes, we have done that for other nonprofits in the past. Roadway impact fees, building permit related fees. Some requests combined, some just requesting those individually. But yes, sir.
Thank you.
This is my area. Some of the residents in Rosa Parks, which is right behind that area, already struggle with the traffic getting in and out of there safely. Or do y'all have any concerns with that, with your trucks and whatnot?
We will bring some additional traffic to the area. I don't think our trucks are going to be the issue as much as volunteers coming out. Usually our peak time for volunteers is on the weekends.
Okay.
So Saturdays and Sundays. I think we will increase the traffic. There is ample parking being designed on site, so
Okay.
that entrance is, farther to the 35 side, so hopefully
Okay.
that'll ease some of the
Okay.
pressure.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else wishing to address this item? Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Item B, discuss and consider approval of the citywide street improvement program, including the fiscal year 2015-16 yearly street maintenance projects of Group 3 and 4 projects under Proposition 1 of the 2013 bond program.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as you recall, in 2015, we held a public meeting whereby we requested input from our residents on the streets that should be considered for inclusion in the fiscal year 15-16 street improvement program. In fact, last year, or this cycle, was the first time that we even used social media to gather some input. We received a lot of input on social media, so that proved to be a good source of input, or a good way to be able to receive input. On January the 11th, after we received that input, staff then analyzed all that input. In fact, walked all of the streets that were proposed for consideration. And on January the 11th, staff presented to the council a proposed street improvement program for fiscal year 15-16. At that meeting, the council did ask us to come back to you for formal approval. In fact, the council also stated that if any council member wished to make some adjustments, that they make adjustments with streets within their own districts. We did receive some feedback from council, and so in District 1, for example, Loma Vista was put into the program in place of Sunset Drive. And then in District 4, just some clarification on the spreadsheet to clarify that Central Avenue from Camp Street to the railroad, in fact, was in both District 4 and 5, as well as the District 4 council member requested that we consider moving up the segment of Hunter Road from New Braunfels Street to the FM 306 to a Group 4 project, which is a bond project. And so what we've done is we've included it as a placeholder to be analyzed, to have some further analyzation to that project in the next planning cycle. Those are the only revisions that have been made to the proposed street improvement program. Be happy to answer any questions, but staff does recommend that the council approved the information as presented in the packet.
I have a question about the Sunset Street versus Loma Vista. Can you tell us what the new acronym is, the PCR or the P, whatever?
I'm going to ask
the ratings.
I'm going to ask Steve and John to help me with that.
Let me look at my current information that we have. With regards to Loma Vista, it's a PCI of 48, and Sunset was 14.
14?
Mm-hmm.
What's the cost of the two? Is there much of a cost difference?
The cost estimate that we had for Loma Vista was right at $31,000, and for Sunset Drive was $35,000.
If we don't do the Sunset one that's at 14 now and delay it, is that going to change the cost much, or is it going to stay about the same if it's?
It should stay essentially about the same, but we have inflation, so you'd be putting off construction either 1 or 2 years or wherever it falls out with regards to the next planning cycle.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'd like to say Sunset is a street that doesn't go anywhere. Loma Vista is a street that's going to be carrying the traffic load whenever we start making improvements to Morningside and Reckley Road. So that was part of the initial approved plan for Loma Vista, was because of the traffic flow that would be coming in and using shortcut routes when Morningside and Reckley Road was being redone. Loma Vista was going to be one of those streets that would be heavily traveled and used. So we need to accommodate that flow.
That makes sense.
Any other questions of council? Do I hear a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address. Please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, we have a motion before us. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Item C, discuss and consider approval of a contract with Granicus Incorporated for agenda management software through an interlocal agreement with the City of College Station. Ron, is this Aggie software?
I certainly hope so. It'll be worth its money.
You know, I was going to make mention that we tried Waco, but I was going to stay away from that.
What about Austin?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Travis Cochran, Director of IT. I'm here tonight to present a proposal for agenda management software. During the budget process for 15-16, we brought to you a proposal of a software to help us manage our agenda process. Currently, staff prepares over 29 different agendas for over 29 different boards and commissions for the city. It's a very labor-intensive process. For this agenda alone, staff prepared over 32 individual agenda memos. And if you're not familiar with how that process goes, as we create the agenda memo, they get sent through review process back to us. over to finance if there's a fiscal impact, over to legal if there's any other legal contracts or information that has to be reviewed. And during that process, any changes that get happened have to be re-emailed out to that entire group. And it creates a large volume of emails and other communication that's sometimes can get lost in the vast email world, but luckily not the spam filter. So it's a very labor-intensive process. It takes a lot of time from staff and also out of the city secretary's office. Also with our current agenda process is our online presence is very cumbersome. It's transparent, we provide all the information out there, but if you've ever gone online to try to look and find out what information has the city done on interlocal agreements, for example, you may get all of the information, and if you do, you're just going to get a list of meeting dates. And it's not going to give you any additional detail until you drill into each one of those individual agendas to find when a particular item was presented. And I'll show you a quick example of that here in a minute. We also have a new law that we have to require, or apply, that we have to follow, that passed in the Texas legislature this past year, House Bill 283. Basically what it states is that any municipality with a population of at least 50,000 people requires us to have the audio and video of any of our regularly scheduled meetings available online for a period of 2 years. Presently, we do 2 to 3 meetings. So we have this requirement that kicks off, or started January of this year, that we have to meet. And so what we're looking, and what we're proposing is a solution that's going to provide a very user-friendly public access. It's a very searchable, indexed access that will provide this information very simply to the public. It also provides the ability to link specific agenda items to specific minutes or timestamps within our meetings. So if you're going back through and you want to find out when we talked about approving a piece of software or any other item, you can click on it and it takes you directly to that video. Whereas today you have to go and say, well, let's look 15 minutes in and scroll through to try to find it. Well, that's not it. So let's go 30 minutes in. And it really takes that guessing game out of it. I mentioned the online search functionality. I'll show a great example of that here in a minute. We will be in full compliance with House Bill 283, and it's a web-based system. So it's going to have allow us to access it from anywhere, whether we're here in the office, at home with a sick family member. You know, if we're happen to be on vacation, we can still get in, approve agenda items, and continue that workflow process that's available to us. So let me take you real quick to a few examples. So this is the city of Bryan. This is how they have set up their, oh, it's not there. Ah, technology. Job security.
Make sure you reboot.
We'll do it this way. Okay, so here's the city of Bryan. What they've done is they've basically embedded the content into their overall look and feel of their website. And so what you'll see is, or the public will see, is when they go online, they'll see a list of all the archived videos and agendas, as well as any upcoming published agenda packets. And so what you can do is actually come in, and what I'm excited about, I love the video. I'm a newer, or different generation, and I love the video aspect of it. So I can click on here, it'll immediately bring up the agenda on the right-hand side, starts playing the recorded meeting, and then I have shortcuts down here to all the different individual items. All this gets created automatically. So as we go through the agenda process, Patrick's office goes through, they finalize the agenda, it publishes it. It's a one-click process. They publish it, it's available online immediately for the public, and then as we go through the meeting, these videos are indexed. So if I want to come down to this item number 8 here, I can click on it, and immediately you'll see the time skipped ahead 47 minutes to exactly when this item started. Beforehand, you would have had to come through and just kind of guess where in the meeting it was and know, where am I on the whole agenda process. Also over here on the right-hand side, it's the full agenda packet. So the public will have the ability to go in and find an individual item as this is going on, click a link to it, if their website will work, and then it'll bring up the details of that information there. I can't say why it's not working just yet. We'll pull up another one here that may be working a little. There we go. If you do have an attachment, it'll pull up directly within it pulls up directly in the screen, side by side with the video. So this is a recorded meeting. The same process will happen during a live meeting. So someone can sit at home, have the agenda there to the side, see what's going on, and kind of follow us along a lot easier than we do today.
So Travis, it'll have a search function?
Yes, sir.
For any televised meeting?
Yes, sir, and I'll show you that right now. So if we look at City of San Marcos as another example of a government entity that uses it, they have they're utilizing the full search capabilities. So over here under this legislation tab, if you want to search for any item, and I'm going to use interlocal, it can be any particular word or phrase that you want to search for. You have multiple search years, so as the longer we use this index and this database will continue to grow, but it pulls it up. That's not showing the full thing. It actually pulls the word interlocal up underneath there. And you can see there it shows the interlocal that we signed with City Marcos just at the end of last year. So as you're going through, you can actually see the different titles of every item that matches that. So you can find which one it is you're interested in seeing more information on. So if you were to go through and say, okay, this is the one I want to dig into a little bit more, you'll get the full information. Here under the History tab, it shows the date, if any, or what the governing body was. Depending on what information you upload, we can provide the action and the result, see the meeting details, and then it can take you directly to that particular video segment. Very seamless, very easy for the folks at home to take advantage of. If you want to, again, the full text of the agenda item is available immediately just by clicking on the text tab. We're going to figure out how to blend these two website styles. St. Marcos is very cut and dry default. Bryant's is only showing a small portion. With our new website project that we're in the middle of, we hope to kind of blend the two to provide a customized search functionality as well. To give you a comparison to our website, so if you go here and you see all the individual agendas that we have just listed, you have no detail. If you want to search for one, you can go to our entire archives, come down here, we'll search interlocal again. We're going to select just the City Council agendas. We'll search for the last year. It's a little bit slower because it's not as indexed. The back-end systems are not really built for this functionality. And when it does pull up, all you see are individual dates. You don't get any information. So if you're looking for a specific item, you have to click on each one of these, wait for it to pull up, find the item within the PDF. If it's not it, you close it, you have to do the next one. So our hope is over time, as we continue to use this system, it'll create a great database of information for the public. And it'll really increase our transparency and make it just that much easier for everyone at home.
Travis, will this only accommodate meetings that are televised, or will there be some way to get agendas in for committee or council meeting, not council, but committee meetings that are not televised?
So initially, we're going to launch this with City Council. This will be our first phase, is to get comfortable with it. The majority of staff is involved in that process, and so we're going to start there. We have the capabilities of rolling this down to every one of our meetings that we hold, whether it's televised or not. If it's not televised, there just will be no video link associated with it. As we roll that forward into future opportunities, we can go paperless, not completely paperless, but less paper. As much as I would love to be fully paperless, there's just no way that's going to happen. But we could provide opportunities for iPads. So there's a great iPad app that goes with this that allows council to take notes within that, highlight the text, circle text, take written notes, and then it'll summarize those written notes on one screen for you. So as you're going through the meeting, you don't necessarily have to find every note that you made throughout the entire binder, if you will. So it's got some great features down the road that we will look to present to y'all and see if it's a benefit.
I hope in the future, when we move to the City Hall, that we've had some great topics at special meetings, and they haven't been televised, and I think we need to move in that direction when we get to the new City Hall, since we'll have a bigger space and the capabilities, hopefully, to do that.
We'll have a room that we'll be able to have workshops at, and we're setting up the camera equipment to be able to televise those as well. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think that's very important, because a lot of people with their work schedules or whatever can't attend the workshops, but they really want to know what's going on.
I would agree, and also our discussions about taping the 4B board meetings as well and having those available for people. But I was wondering, because I get a lot of, or some people who watch from home, or whether it's on their computer or on TV, audio issues. Does this have anything that would help improve that, or it's just?
I don't believe this system will have anything. We're continuing to evaluate our system behind us here and see what we can do to make that more consistent.
We'll have new mics at the new location.
And with that, that's our presentation. And if there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions of council? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please identify Mr. Less. Okay, with that, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Cochran. Item D, discuss and consider approval of a task order with Ascura Robinson for the Landa Park Master Plan under the IDIQ engineering contract and appropriate budget amendment.
Good evening, Council. This is the item for approval of a contract with Ascura Robinson for the Landa Park Master Plan. We were before you last month for the same contract. We did take it back to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and they did vote favorably, unanimously, in fact, to approve the contract. So we have it back in front of you again tonight. As a reminder, the scope of services does include a comprehensive assessment of the park, of the maintenance programs within the park, the programming and the visitor use of the park. It also includes an accessibility review for compliance with ADA, preparation of conceptual designs, and a draft master plan that will be reviewed by the public. Final master plan, cost estimates, and phasing options. This does include a thorough public engagement effort with the public. And then, as we talked about at the last council meeting, it will also include a comprehensive look at parking within Landa Park. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have for me tonight.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I know we have a older master plan that never was materialized or worked on. Actually, there was a Plan A and a Plan B.
Correct.
So I assume this picks up from there, or
Yes, sir.
actually, hopefully, re-scrubs everything?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The thing that bothers me is that we're going into the HEB Soccer Complex Fund to help fund this, since it was, now it's 75.5 as far as the cost. This is, I think, the second time we've gone into that fund for something. And I just want council to be realizing that when we come to needing some more things with the HEB Soccer Complex. So just want to make that statement.
When we did get the funding to do improvements at the soccer complex, we finished the lights and the fencing and the parking lot, and then the remaining, we did reserve funds within that project to complete the rest of the irrigation on the Grape Avenue end. So we did reserve funds there, so we will be able to complete that irrigation as we intended to. So the remaining funds over and above that amount are available for this Landa Park. And then the other part that we did take was for Morningside Park construction, as you referred to.
So is there anything on the HEB soccer field list that we are not completing by taking this? Or was it, hey, we checked everything off, this was the contingency money?
For what we had intended to do with that money, we've done everything. Now, there's a lot of things that can be done at the HEB soccer complex.
But we did everything that
That's
we
right.
had pitched to the public that we were going to do at those
Yes,
times.
ma'am, we did.
Okay. I have one other question, and I can't remember what it was. We talked about when we were looking at the parking, charging for parking, that we wanted to wait because of this plan. So this plan is going to encompass those things that we talked about at the prior meeting, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Any questions? Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address. Please limit to 5 minutes or less. I have a question. I forgot to ask.
Too late.
I had a concerned resident ask about shutting down access in Landa Park. This plan is not intending on shutting down access as far as roadway access.
Well, we will look at pedestrian accessibility and roadway usage within the park, but the main intention is to listen to the public and what their desires for the park are. So there are a lot of roads that cut through the park. So if it is the desire of the residents to reduce the number of roads that dissect the park, that is something that would be considered. If it's not the desire of the public to do that, that would.
But that would only be discovered through the public input portion.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay, with that, anyone else wishing to address this item? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Item E, discuss and consider approval of a task order with Schrinkel, Rollins, and Associates for the Mission Hill Park Master Plan under the IDIQ Engineering Task Order.
Thank you. So similar to the Landa Park Master Plan, this would be a master plan for Mission Hill Park. The Parks Foundation does hold in trust for the city the 10 acres of land at Mission Hill. They are holding that land in trust for us. They will dedicate it back to the city when we are ready to receive that land. The reason that they are holding it in trust for us is that we can use that as a match for a grant at a future date. Just want to point that out from the beginning, similar to what we've done at Fisher Park. So the preparation of this plan would include a public engagement effort, a comprehensive assessment of the property, the maintenance efforts, preparation of conceptual design, and a final master plan, the cost estimates and phasing options. The project is slated for a February kickoff. It would be a 6-month schedule for completion. And it is Schrinkel Rollins Associates that is on our IDIQ list that we have selected to do this project. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Sorry, go ahead.
Stacy, when we were looking at Market Plaza Park, we use staff to develop that plan. Do we ever consider using staff for some of these rather than consultants?
We do, and that was a good option for us. Market Plaza is a much smaller property, and we did do public input on that property, but it was a much smaller effort. So for this property and the public engagement effort and the amount of design and effort that's needed on this, we felt like it was better to use a larger firm than, we just have one staff person with the ability, where the firm, they have more options available to them than what we have.
So assumedly, we're keeping that one person busy.
Yes, we definitely are. And he'll be involved in the process.
I might remind my colleagues and people in the audience that this is the 10 acres that's over on Mission Hill off of Independence. That is one of the highest points in the county. And the topography itself will be a challenge to the architect to design something that we can take advantage of the views from that location. And I think looking at their website, they do some pretty good work, looks like. And so I'm anxious to see what they might come forth with.
And how big is Landa Park in comparison?
Landa Park is about 50 acres.
50 acres. That was one of the things I was wondering, if the Landa Park master plan is going to cost 75 and this one's a fifth of the size but still costs half. That's just is what it is, or is it more of like man hours with the public input? Like, how does the size relate to the cost estimates?
It doesn't always relate directly. This is a raw piece of land, and so the planning efforts are a little differently. The topography is different. The needs of the land are different, so the planning effort will just be addressed differently than the Landa Park will, obviously. We actually are, our first This is a negotiated price down from 48,000. So we did we scrubbed the scope and we scrubbed a few things out from their first round. So we brought it down a little bit.
Stacy, in reference to, I apologize for not asking before, but
That's okay.
with the River Properties Master Plan, how much of an overlap can be from this master plan with the River Properties in reference to the scope of services with a comprehensive assessment of existing facilities?
Well, the scope will be similar in nature, but as far as an overlap in the actual work, like would this, or is the question, would this consultant do any of the work that this consultant would do, take care of any of the work for the river
Right.
property master plan?
Because I mean, I'm just saying in case whenever it comes back to council, the scope of service is saying the same thing as far as an assessment of the existing facilities and assets that we have now, if they're already doing it for Mission Hill.
Well, of course, the assessment would be different because it would be a different property. So the assessment would take place on the river properties. They would be looking at those properties specifically and doing assessment of a survey of those properties, what the property boundaries are, what the restrictions on those properties were. So they would be two separate assessments.
Sure. I guess maybe I'm getting confused as far as any overlap with assessment of existing facilities that we have citywide. Is that what that means with the scope of services?
No,
or
it's just for this property, just this 10 acres.
And what we can do with it as far as what we have with everything else, or just with this property?
It's just for this
Okay,
property.
okay. Thank you.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less. With that, we have a motion, a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. Item F, passed unanimously, sorry. Item F, discuss and consider approval of the City of New Braunfels fiscal year 2014-15 fourth quarter investment report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm going to be presenting the fourth quarter. I'm going to be presenting the fourth quarter investment report for the City of New Braunfels, ending September 30th, 2015. 2014-15 continued to be a really volatile year in the market. There were conversations that the feds were going to raise the interest rates towards the end of September. We didn't see any movement till the middle of December when the feds raised the rates by 25 basis points. However, there was a lot going on in the market that was kind of fighting against each other, so we didn't see a lot of favorable rates come up. The foreign markets were pretty poor, as well as crude oil prices were at its all-time low during the fourth quarter of this past year. What I've got up here for you is the portfolio of the City of New Braunfels. We started the quarter with a little over $102 million in our portfolio. We ended the year with a little over $99 million in our portfolio. Our unrealized gain or unrealized loss was about $60, and we had an unrealized change in gain of $16. We're talking really small numbers, but with the way the market was this past year, it's very difficult to try to find anywhere to put our money to receive any kind of investment earnings. One of the things we have been doing since the market has been so poor is we've been working with our banks. Our bank gives us an earnings credit rate, which is 30 basis points. And that's one of the best places we can leave our money right now. We get 30 basis points, which basically avoid service fees at the bank by leaving an adequate amount of money in the bank. So we saved about $9,000 in bank fees over the last quarter in 2015, and we saved over $40,000 for the whole year. Moving on, I've given you a list of the authorized investments that we can use. The Public Funds Investment Act is very limited on what municipalities can invest in, as well as our investment policy. Really, really difficult to try to find ways to put money and earn a little bit of money, considering the market and considering how limited we are. I want to show you our yield comparison for the year. So our average yield to maturities for the period dropped from 7.8 basis points to 6.5 basis points. However, when we looked at the 90-day yield on the Treasury bill, it went up from 1 basis point to 4 basis points. And then the 180-day T-bill rate went up from 6 basis points to 17 basis points. So you see a little bit of favorable movement in the market. Here is our portfolio summary. So you can see, as we've seen all year long, that the biggest part of our portfolio is resting in the pools. We've got a little over 60% for both periods in the pools, as well as our cash. As I was talking about earlier, leaving money in our general operating account is actually an investment strategy now because of how low the interest rates we've been seeing. We had some CDs as well as some bonds that matured from the third quarter in 2015 to the final quarter in 2015 as well. We did purchase $20 million in some federal agencies the first quarter of 2016 with some anticipated earnings of 50 basis points. So we hope to see a little bit of movement as we go on with the next quarterly investment report. We also prepared an RFQ. We are currently reviewing investment advisor proposals, and we're hoping that we can work with an investment advisor to kind of help us ladder our funds in light of the debt that we'll be issuing later on this year. We're hoping we can find someone that can help us out to earn a little bit better than what you guys are seeing right here. So we recommend that you approve the investment policy here before you, and I can answer any questions you might have.
Marty, on the pools that you show, who manages the investments in those pools, and what kind of yields are we seeing?
We're seeing very, very small yields. The main pool that we use is Tex Pool. It's an interlocal governmental pool that a lot of cities within the state of Texas are using. I'm trying to think what the rate was yesterday, and it was about 17 basis points. So we're seeing it move up
and
a little bit.
Who's the manager of that pool?
The manager is Tex Pool. So it's
Pool is
an interlocal government pool.
That's a governmental agency.
Yes, sir.
Counties, cities, everybody puts it in because it's managed by
regulated by the state of Texas. So not managed, but regulated by the state of Texas.
Okay.
So it's very safe. It's a very secure fund.
Thank you.
Any other questions for me?
Too many county treasurers long ago ran off with the money.
That's true. There's been some really bad stories, so we are highly regulated now. So, any other questions for me? Thank you.
Move
for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit it to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Item G, discuss and consider approval of a budget amendment in the fiscal year 2015-16 adopted budget for the Convention and Tourism Fund and the Hotel Motel Tax Fund.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. On an annual basis, as we're developing the following fiscal year's budget, we project revenues and expenses for all of the funds. And the Convention and Tourism Fund and Hotel Motel Tax Fund are no different. The current contract that we have with the Greater New Braunfels Chamber of Commerce allows them to receive up to 50% of the actual hotel motel tax revenues that are collected on an annual basis in a fiscal year. And it also states that if after the reconciliation, which we do on an annual basis after the end of the fiscal year, we reconcile the actual revenues received and then look at the actual expenses of the Convention and Tourism Fund plus the reserve requirement. And if the actual revenues exceed those expenditures, then the chamber then come back to the council and propose a budget amendment and also propose the use of those funds for the council to consider. In fiscal year 14-15, that reconciliation was done, and there's an additional $137,780 for the council to consider repurposing for the chamber. And so they are here this evening to present to you a plan on how to utilize those funds. There are some representatives here from the chamber to present that to you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Judy Young, 785 Dallas Street. I am still supposed to do that, right?
Yes,
okay.
Please.
We do have a presentation for you this evening, and then we'll be able to answer any questions. So if you would mind starting it.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We appreciate your confidence in the Chamber's Convention and Visitors Bureau and strive to continue to increase the return on investment. What does tourism actually bring to New Braunfels? According to the latest economic impact study, $531.5 million to all funding sources. Our hospitality industry contributed $14.5 million in taxes and other revenue to the city of New Braunfels, and in total contributed $22.4 million in taxes and other revenue to all local taxing districts in 2014. Thanks to an outstanding 2014-2015 tourism year, an amount of hotel occupancy tax above the original approved Convention and Visitors Bureau budget has been realized. The difference between the approved CVB budget and the actual cash receipts for 50% of the hotel tax is $137,780. According to Section 6.3 of the current contract, if in any fiscal year 50% of the local hotel occupancy tax revenue exceeded the CTF's actual expenditures plus the required reserve, then the Chamber will submit to the City Council for their consideration an amended budget that addresses the use of those funds. The CVB Marketing Touchstone Committee, Chamber Board of Directors, and CVB Strategy and Steering Committee have all met and concur to propose implementing a new long-term marketing campaign that develops an iconic vintage vacation campaign with tangible assets that will appear in print, online, outdoor, promotional products, trade shows, and at on-site outreach events. With this in mind, the CVB proposes the following. As an example of a long-term marketing campaign using an iconic image, we take you back to our previous award-winning campaign of The Tube. We took what we were known for and we put it in a situation that cross-marketed all the other activities in New Braunfels very successfully. And this campaign lasted us nearly 10 years. And when it was gone, folks asked, "Where's that Tube campaign?" We'd like to get back to that level of popularity and consistency. What are we inviting people to do? We are inviting them to choose New Braunfels as their destination vacation. How will they typically do that? Typically, we are a drive destination, and our major markets are the big metroplexes that surround us in Texas. What if we went to them? What if we provided them the opportunity to experience New Braunfels in their own backyard? Getting to know New Braunfels as a vintage destination for every stage of life is more challenging today with the influx of a new visiting population, and the competition to maintain our level of repeat visitation is growing as other communities across Texas realize the positive economic impact of tourism. The asset development includes a vintage Willis that on its own evokes an emotional reaction across each generation, but with the additional creative presentations that are presented in the following mock-ups, we will cement our authentic vintage family destination. Referencing back to the on-site activation teams in their own backyard, we can have a multitude of opportunities for visitors to interact with our vintage experience while posting very modern social imagery across all channels. The image that you see now gives a visitor the ability to take a selfie and post it directly up to their social media favorite. Taking the selfie concept one step further, we can implement a green screen with multiple different destination shots of New Braunfels where the visitor can actually see themselves and put themselves in New Braunfels on site and then post it up to their favorite website. As an example, for on-site activation events, we have such great live music in New Braunfels, we can actually give them a taste of that with some on-site musicians. In keeping with the spirit of evoking an emotional response to our new iconic imagery, let's bump it up a notch with this vintage trailer. Now, don't think camping, think studio, think lounge, think a place to do amazing interviews with amazing artists, or even when we go on site in Houston and Dallas, we can do our TV programming in this studio trailer. Taking New Braunfels to the market becomes a personal experience for potential users and is then reinforced via print, television, online, sweepstakes, promotions, trade shows. The list is endless. Remembering that it takes at least 17 impressions before a potential visitor is spurred to action. As you can see from the following slides, we have multiple opportunities to present New Braunfels both in market in print and online. Here's an example of a print ad. It's a rough draft, but you get the idea that we have a vintage vehicle that gets your attention, and possibly we have modern day golfers getting out the front and maybe vintage golfers getting out the back. But either way, it's a different image for New Braunfels that gives credence to both our history and our modern day activities. Continuing on our mission to make those 17 impressions, why not have a direct approach? In this vision, we show you that we really want you to drive to New Braunfels and enjoy the view. So this would be great in print, but imagine it online, one of those ads that follows you around and just gets you all nostalgic and ready to come visit. There will be many opportunities for many years to come with this type of long-lasting yet highly flexible campaign. We appreciate your confidence in the Chamber's Convention and Visitors Bureau and strive to continue to increase the return on investment, both for the community, for the city's general fund, and for our arts and cultural groups, as well as the convention center. Thank you.
Shall I clap?
So we're happy to answer any questions.
Judy, the operation of taking the Willie and the trailer or the whatever, camper, to places, that's going to take personnel, it's going to take maintenance, it's going to take those costs. Are those a part of this or some other part with the chamber, or how's that all work?
Part of it will go into the public relations line item that we already have, and part of it then goes into convention services when it goes to trade shows for meeting planners. So there's pieces of it that will be divided out between the different line items that we have, and there is some of it that is included in the project that we're proposing tonight.
Okay, and so the equipment for the selfie and everything, that's all included in this?
That's included in the public relations
Public
line item.
relations.
We were already going to do that
do that
project
anyway.
for the conventions that we have here and for trade shows. This just really exponentially gets more attention. When we roll this into a trade show and have it be our booth, we'll be the best booth in the shop. It'll be a little bit more interesting than a table with a tablecloth, some pictures, and some brochures.
And since that's an expensive piece of equipment, where are you going to house that?
At A&E Classic Cars.
Okay.
They have the hauler, they have everything.
Move for approval.
Second. Thanks.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Item H, public hearing and approval of a resolution amending the 2006 future land use plan for approximately 1.75 acres from the residentially low density to commercial, and approval of a second and final reading of an ordinance regarding the proposed rezoning of approximately 84.65 acres out of the AM as NARS or Survey Abstract Number 1 subdivisions number 61 and 62, Comal County, from R2A Single and Two Family District and APD Agricultural Pre-Development District to Augustfield's Planned Development District with concept plan. Mr. Looney.
Thank you, Mayor. So yes, this is on the agenda for its second reading, but also because the requested rezoning requires a future land use plan amendment. Just as a reminder, the current zoning is R2A and APD and comprises almost 85 acres with frontage on both Albus Lane and 1101 between Canyon Middle School and Freiheit Elementary School. The applicant is requesting a PD with a small commercial area, 1.75 acres right in this area here, with the balance of their PD being single-family residential. The base zoning would be C1A and ZHA, respectively. The request for the future land use plan amendment would be just for the 1.75 acre commercial area, as you can see in the red triangle, to change it from the residential low density, currently the yellow color, to the red commercial future land use designation. Staff and Planning Commission recommend approval with conditions as stipulated in the report. We mailed 28 notices to owners of property within 200 feet, received 2 responses in favor and 1 in opposition.
Thank you.
Do I hear any, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Any questions of Mr. Looney? Okay, this is a public hearing. We'll open it up to public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, and please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, I'll close the public hearing.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you please, we've had a public hearing, but anyone wishing to address this item? Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second. This is a second and final reading. Mr. Ayton, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Green.
Aye.
Councilmember Edwards.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves.
Aye.
Councilmember Monsiváis.
Aye.
Councilmember Peters.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia.
Aye.
Mayor Castillo.
Aye, and the motion passes unanimously. Item I, public hearing and approval of a resolution amending the 2006 future land use plan for approximately 15 acres from residential low density and commercial to residential medium high density, and approval of the second and final reading of an ordinance rezoning approximately 15 acres out of the AM as Narzer 11 League Grant addressed at 1141 Highway 46 South from R3L multifamily low density with a special use permit to allow 16 units per acre, C1A neighborhood business and APD agricultural pre-development districts to R-3H multifamily high density. Mr. Looney.
Thank you. Also on the agenda for second reading as well as future land use plan amendment, approximately 15 acres on the north side of Highway 46, east of Stonegate Drive, all east of Interstate 35. Currently zoned a mixture of C1A, R3L, and APD, the result of a myriad of rezoning cases over the years. The applicant is requesting the R3H zoning. It would allow a maximum of 24 units per acre if approved. The future land use plan calls for commercial with some low-density residential, as you can see in the rear. Medium to high-density residential future land use would accommodate the requested rezoning. This is an aerial photograph, of course, of the site, and staff and planning commission recommend approval. We mailed 24 notices, received 3 responses in favor and 1 in opposition. And that 1 in opposition, to remind you from the last meeting, we had to zoom in to see it happens to cross the property there. So that's where it's picked up. Thank you.
Chris, this is sitting behind that proposed Nissan dealership. Some part of it is.
I think that's the next agenda item,
No,
sir?
this is on 46 going towards Seguin, right?
Yes, sir.
Right past Stonegate Drive.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Did we add an extra provision last time?
No.
No.
It's not, we can't do conditional zoning anyways,
No, we didn't.
No, I thought something to do with connection.
to get with the.
There was some, excuse me.
No, go ahead, sorry.
There was some discussion about connection, but there wasn't a condition or
Okay.
anything added.
Move for approval.
Second.
This is a public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, we'll close public hearing. I've had a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to address that item now? And seeing none, all those, it's a roll call vote. So, Mr. Ayton, will you please call the roll, second final reading?
Councilmember Green.
Nay.
Councilmember Edwards.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves.
Aye.
Councilmember Monsiváis.
Aye.
Councilmember Peters.
Aye.
Councilmember Garcia.
Aye.
Mayor Castillo.
Aye. Item J, public hearing and approval of the first reading of an ordinance regarding the rezoning of 187.5 acres out of the Henry Foster Survey number 34, abstract number 154, Comal County, Texas, addressed at 1721 and 1911 Post Road from N1 Light Industrial District to Post Road Development District with a concept plan.
Thank you. This one is behind where the Nissan would be. This is approximately 188 acres between Post Road, IH-35, and the railroad tracks. The applicant is proposing a PD with 107.8 acres occupied by single-family residential and 25 acres multifamily. The proposed base zoning would be R1A 6.6. The major variations from the base zoning is smaller lot widths and lot sizes. as well as they're going to require masonry and some other design standards for residential, which we do not have in our current standards, so with the PD, they would add that. One thing I did want to mention that has been revised in the staff report since Planning Commission. At Planning Commission, the table that you can see, the first table in the report mentioned that they would plan for 787 single-family residences. Since the Planning Commission, they have revised that because they have specifically identified that area for the multifamily. So that has been reduced down to 682 single-family residences. Currently zoned M1, as the caption states, and the future land use plan calls for a mixture of residential and commercial. Therefore, if this requested rezoning is approved, a future land use plan amendment would be necessary for portions of the property. Staff and Planning Commission recommend approval. We mailed 68 notices to owners of property within 200 feet, received 4 responses in favor and 3 in opposition. And just like with the last one, we kind of zoomed in so you could see those that are in opposition there. One fronting Post Road and the other fronting the frontage road of IH-35. Thank you.
Chris, if it stayed the zoning it is, the number of single-family units is less in the plan, in the recommended, or the proposed development, is that correct?
If it stays as it is, yes, the M1. If they went with the base zoning as proposed, and then it was just that, it could max out at 9 units per acre, but with proposed with the PD, it could be 7 units per acre. Again, once we factor in the infrastructure, the streets, and the drainage and so forth, that's what kind of reduces it down a bit.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Is this the one over by Nissan?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just want to ask about drainage. That'll be all considered because, you know, that was a problem that they had even discussed too.
Mm-hmm.
So this seems like to be right in the middle of it, or not in the middle, but at one edge of it at least. So we'll take care of that, right? Or they will?
They'll have to, yes, sir. With the zoning just kind of sets the land use, and then after that, they will need to prepare all of their drainage engineering to accommodate the land uses. And so that would come during the plating stage and then ultimately reviewed building permit stage.
Chris, why don't you point out on the previous map, for whoever's watching,
Sure.
where the proposed Nissan
Number
dealership
24.
will be? I think it's on the color map.
Oh, sorry.
I think it shows up on there.
Which one here?
It's with the stub out.
Right there by the M1A.
Right.
Just to the,
Right there.
well,
The
choose
color's
another
purple,
color.
so it's.
No, not
Is it
there.
that stub
There
out?
we go.
That's not it? Oh,
That stub out right there? Is that what
It's
you're
about
talking
right
Where
there.
that street stubs out there.
Yeah,
That's where it is.
Where I was marking, right?
right. Where you started.
Yeah, in the same
So
color.
it's the same color, but let me go to a different. So there we go. This.
But that's
right
it,
in the
yeah.
center. There we go.
And
Now,
Chris,
where does the street go?
Street goes into the development.
Right.
Like, just straight?
That's one that-
Is that where it's planned?
Yeah, that'll be a street that's built when this is done.
Right.
It's not an existing street.
And I have a follow-up question on that. If you can go back to the transportation, the hike and bike trails plan map
Oh, let's see.
for reference, right
Yes,
there,
yes.
yeah. With the proposed collector from Nissan Way to Wingate, I just was curious because driving by Wingate, it has that, the street signs in red, like it's a private road, so I wasn't sure how that connection
Yeah, I was
works.
curious about that too, because it looks like it's a private street.
So I don't know who maintains that or.
That will be, I'll need to look into that to get you some answers related to Wingate, where it currently exists today.
Any other questions? This is a public hearing. Let's open it up to the public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address. Please limit it to 5 minutes or less. Please, sir. Right here at the podium.
City Council Mayor, my name is Lee Starnes. I reside at 195 Richter Lane, in Braunfels, Texas, 78130. When we came to the planning and zoning meeting several weeks back, several homeowners that live along Post Road were against this development. However, on the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission, they asked us to meet with the developer,
And we voiced concerns about the flooding, the drainage along Post Road, because if you drive down Post Road, which is supposed to be a historical route, that is called El Camino, I think, it's a horrible condition. Post Road is just horrible, along with the drainage ditches that go along there. And then you're adding those homes, it was gonna cause more flooding in our areas. In the recent flood that we just had, our house happened to be the only one that looked like an island over there. So we were kind of concerned, along with the homeowners, about all the flooding. If the drain ditches were taken care of, and with their plan of a retention pond in the subdivision, that would help. But what we're also concerned about is the traffic. If you go down Richter Lane and Post Road, it's horrible. I mean, the roads are just breaking apart.
Post Road is on the list of streets to be repaired this year from this whole section.
I hope so.
From 306 to...
R35 to...
Hopefully Green Road, because that's the worst of it.
I'm sorry, not 36.
It would actually be
from 35 to, I think it was Glenbrook.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, but that whole stretch, almost the entire width or length, or whatever you want to call it, of that proposed development is in the plan for this year's
A large
street.
budgeted item too.
Yeah,
It
is.
was,
Oh, I have it here somewhere.
And I mean, we were all against it, not all, majority of us were against it, but now we're more in favor of, not really in favor. We're okay with them building there, but we're just concerned about the drainage. If we're more wanting, if you guys could maybe work with them and help us resolve that issue. I mean, we don't mind the houses going in there, we're just concerned about all that flooding. There is 2 retention ponds on Green and Post Road. There's a real big one there, and then there's a small one. I can tell you those flood every time it rains. The water literally goes over the banks of those little areas there. If we got rid of the vegetation along Post Road in those drain ditches and their development, then we wouldn't have a problem with it, but the water just doesn't move because there's so much vegetation.
Yeah, it's actually Post Road to Sagebrook, and I'm sure that will be part of that project. Robert, maybe you can comment on that in terms of the drainage ditches and so on and so forth. I don't think this is one that is a curbed street, but...
It is not a curb street. It actually has ditches along both sides of it.
But those will be
We'll also
upgraded or
we'll also
whatever.
take a look at the drainage as well as the condition of the roadway. We have estimated approximately just under $400,000 for Post Road in this fiscal year, sir.
Right, and in the planning and zoning, it also made mention about possibly widening Post Road. If you widen Post Road, you'll literally be in my bedroom. Because then you'll take away the drain ditches that are inadequate as it is, and then I'm gonna have cars or tractor trailers pretty much going right through my bedroom, because our house sits almost right on Post Road, right on the corner of Richter and Post. We did come to an agreement with them, pretty much. We agree, we just want the sewage, not sewage, but the drains taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir, please.
Mayor, City Council. My name is Sean Burton. I represent Essentia Real Estate Investments. I might be able to clear up the Wingate Drive for you. That is actually the property that we own. It's the mobile home park that is just north of this proposed development. It is a private drive. Our concern is similar to the gentleman over here, is in the drainage, and we would, every time it rains, we do get flooded quite a bit because that actual property slopes towards our property on the north. So that is a concern that we hope will be addressed, and once everything is finalized. But to let you know, we do own the Wingate property, and that is where that drive comes in. It is a private drive.
Can I ask you a question, sir?
Yes.
Is that something that you've already kind of put into maybe that's a question for Mr. Looney, but as far as, is it your intention then when it's built out to hand over that to the city? Or your intentions to kind of block off access? at the end of that road?
Yes, sir, that actually hasn't been discussed at this point. Our partners in Littleton, Colorado, it would be something that we could certainly be open for discussion.
Well, then, I guess I don't quite understand then. If the cut-through is intended to go all the way over to 306, and it's going through your property and connecting to Wingate, wouldn't you have to turn it over? Chris, can you?
Thank you. I don't know, touch the microphone. So it's on the thoroughfare plan as being a connection. So the thought was, assuming that when it was adopted, that at some point in the future it could become a public street and be that collector connection. And so being that it's on the thoroughfare plan, at some point in time, if it were redeveloped and then platted, then the dedication would come forward.
Would have to occur.
But until such time as that occurs, it would remain their private property.
And if something nearby, because we found this out time and time again, if something nearby were to develop, then that line might move over. Remember, it is only a master plan for as things develop. So if this gentleman does not develop, it's not going to go across his property, and it's unlikely, since we don't do eminent domain, and we haven't on a hike and bike trail, that we would wait for an area within that area to develop, correct?
Yes, sir.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Don't look for us to eminent domain for hike and bike trail.
It's a roadway.
Anyone else wishing to address this item?
My name is Dan Brule, I represent the developer. Mr. Mayor, members of this council, I'm here to answer any questions if you may have them of the developer. We also have our engineering firm, Yago Engineering, here as well.
Any questions? Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing. Do I hear any motions?
Move for approval.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. I know Mr. Looney's not here, but just, we already had some people touch on it.
Yeah, he's here.
Sorry, I know Mr. Ford is not here, apologize.
They look a lot alike.
I need a Diet Coke at some point. But this is a plan concept where we're reducing the number of homes that would be allowed based on the previous zoning. And any development after that would have to account for drainage and would have to be signed off. Okay. Okay, with that, we have a motion and a second. And all those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye. Aye. Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Keep moving on. Anybody need?
I need a break.
Do what?
I would just like a quick break myself.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break. Thank you, and we'll be right back.
Bless.
Wait for Chris. Okay, yes.
Okay, we're back. Public hearing and approval of the first reading of an ordinance regarding the rezoning of 5.558 acres of Freiheit 2, Block 4, Lot 1, located at 510 South Colwall Lane, from R2 Single Family and 2 Family District to Canyon Reserve Plan Development District with a detailed plan.
Thank you. Here's an aerial of the tract on Colwall Lane east of IH 35. The applicant is also proposing a plan development. PDs are a popular zoning district. They plan to develop duplex development on smaller lots than would be allowed in the R2, hence the PD that they're requesting. It's currently zoned R2, and the proposed rezoning would be consistent with the future land use plan, which calls for medium-density residential on this tract and some surrounding tracts. Staff and Planning Commission recommend approval. We mailed 4 notices, but we received no responses, either in favor or in opposition.
Chris, you might point out that area on this map, 640, is I guess it's an apartment complex going in there.
Another development, yes, sir, is going in here. So
which has been approved, I assume, since they're built and working on it.
Right. Didn't require a zoning change or anything. So that's some more development with access off Cowell.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Let's open it up to public hearing. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less. Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing.
Is the applicant here?
Yes.
The applicant is here.
Do you mind if you give us your spiel real fast?
My name is Clay Schlinky. You want home address or? Address 128 Alex Jordan, Blanco, Texas. Basically, what we're doing is proposing is a duplex townhome style development. Will be 22 duplexes at this location. The reason we're asking for the PDD zoning is some drainage constraints on the site as it's narrow for the total site for the 5.5 acres. But we still meet the minimum width and the minimum depth requirements in the city code. Is just kind of how it was written. The overall square footage of the lot where we don't meet that. That's why I had to ask for the PDD zoning change. So any questions for myself?
You having sidewalks?
Yes, sir. We'll have sidewalks. We're going to put in a small park area, some additional parking in the development as well to make sure, there's no off-street parking in the development.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions, or? Thank y'all.
Thank you. Okay, I do hear a motion.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to address this item? Okay, with that, we've had a public hearing. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes unanimously. Item L, discuss and consider approval of second and final reading of an ordinance regarding a type 2 special use permit to allow short-term rental of a house in the R3 multifamily district addressed at 1683 Keeler Avenue.
Asia is recusing from this item.
And yeah, let the record reflect that Mrs. Edwards has recused herself.
Thank you. This subject property, as you can see by the aerial, is located between Keeler Avenue and the Guadalupe River. The current zoning is R3, and the applicant is requesting an SUP for a short-term rental. The house on the site has 5 sleeping areas and would be required by our codes to maintain at least 5, but no more than 6 paved parking spaces. Future land use plan calls for residential. A base zoning change is not requested by the applicant, just application of the SUP, so no land use plan amendment would be needed. Staff and Planning Commission recommend approval. We mailed 17 notices, received no responses in favor. We received 2 in opposition, and I wanted to point out very quickly that the map doesn't illustrate them. The one in your packet does, but this track here is represented by opposition, and these 2. There's 2 notices, so we believe that the property owners who sent those in own multiple tracks in the vicinity. And I'd also, on the overhead, I'd like to share a map in answer to a question that a council member had at the last meeting, at the first reading. There was a question regarding how many other short-term rentals there are on Keeler Avenue or in the vicinity, and 2 did come up. They're outlined in black. They might be a little bit hard to see.
I got Chris.
Here. Sorry. And then the other one here. The subject property is right here. So halfway in between. Those are the others in the area. Thank you.
Move for approval.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, please limit to 5 minutes or less.
Lee Edwards, 311 Hunters Creek. I'm here on behalf of the Herons. If you have any questions, just let me know. She's very sick and still in the hospital, so.
Lee,
Yes.
what's the 3 properties to the west?
Let's see, to the west, back toward
Yeah.
Where are we here? There's Keeler. From this house, we're talking about these three right
Yeah,
here.
yes,
Those are R3 multifamily.
multifamily.
Mhm. And then all of the houses along here, their backyards face that, so there's no entry onto Keeler. They all have bottling.
That's what I was trying to
Then
remember.
from this point on, it's all R2. Those are all duplexes. They're all rental. So,
Thank
yeah, thanks. Further down. And then, of course, we have the ball fields and the sewer plant.
We have a motion and a second. This is the second and final reading. Mr. Ayton, will you please call the roll?
Councilmember Green.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Reeves.
Aye.
Councilmember Monsiváis.
Aye.
Councilmember Peters.
Nay.
Councilmember Garcia.
Nay.
Mayor Castillo.
Aye. I believe that passes. Okay. Item M has already been taken up. Item N and O have both been pulled, correct? Or no,
Actually,
wait.
just
I'm
N,
sorry.
yes.
N has been pulled,
Yes, sir.
and O has requested a postponement?
Yes, sir. The applicant has requested a postponement to the next city council meeting. So if city council is so inclined to postpone it to that date, a motion and a vote to do so would allow us to agendize it for the February 8th meeting.
All right, go
I'm
ahead.
just going to ask, do you need a motion to do that?
Yes.
If so, I'll move that we postpone it till the
February 8th.
February 8th meeting.
I'll
Second.
second that.
Okay. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address. Okay, and with that, we have a motion and a second to postpone to February the 8th, item O. And I apologize. I did not read it. I asked, and I found out item N had been removed, and I didn't read O. I've never done that, so I need to go ahead and read it. Apologize. And we'll redo it. That's my fault. Item O, discuss and consider approval of a waiver to allow the escrow of funds in lieu of constructing a sidewalk along FM 758 adjacent to Lot G, the village at Clear Springs Commercial Unit Number 2. And it's my understanding they want a postponement. Do I hear a motion?
So move.
Second.
To February the 8th.
Yes.
All right. We have a motion and a second to postpone to February 8th. Anyone wishing to address this item? Okay, with that, all those in favor of the postponement, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay. And the motion passes as postponed to February the 8th. Item P, discuss and consider a proposed reinvestment plan in the Morningside and Psalms area.
Thank you, Mayor Castile. Members of the council, Jeff Jewell, Development Coordinator. In December, the City Council heard a presentation from a representative of National Church Services discussing a proposed reinvestment project that they are considering doing on the property that they own, Balcones House. Balcones House is 39 units of rental housing for low-income seniors. It was built in 1988, and they are proposing to use low-income housing tax credits, a particular set-aside in that program to do a reinvestment to update the facility, bring it up to more modern standards, et cetera. They are requesting a resolution of support, a financial contribution that is considered to be de minimis, as well as, and this is something that's a little bit different than what this council has heard in the past, which was a reinvestment plan for a particular area. The qualified allocation plan by the state calls for a reinvestment plan to be larger or to represent an area that's larger than the proposed Balcones House investment. And so what we have in front of you all tonight is a draft of that plan that we were able to create over the last 30 days or so. Just very broadly, I just would like to hit some highlights from that particular plan. It represents approximately 5,000 acres. The boundaries of it are effectively the I-35 access road down to Psalms Road, bounded on the east side by Morningside Drive. It's technically a census tract, which is a small, relatively permanent statistical subdivision that's used by the U.S. Census Bureau. The demographics of the particular area, it's just short of 2,000 residents. The median age is 32.7 years. The unemployment rate in this particular area is 10.6%, and the median household income is $37,376. The particular plan identifies existing conditions. It gives some of the descriptive statistics that I discussed earlier. It discusses the current land uses as well as future land uses. Discusses public outreach that was done as part of creating and documenting these efforts, as well as making some findings, some general findings about the particular plan area. One of the requirements in the QAP is that the particular plan for reinvestment must have a committed funding allocation as well as a deadline to complete the projects that are listed in it, which is why the strategy of basically documenting what the city has done to propose these major capital improvement projects in the area was discussed at that December meeting, and we effectively got the go-ahead to pursue that strategy. So what you see is a documentation of the efforts that the city's undertaken, as well as the for this particular area. So I think that's really what I have. I guess I'll take questions from the council.
Jeff, I have a number of
Yes, sir.
questions. I appreciate first the responses you sent to me, but I still have some questions. The first one is on one of these pages, page 423, the executive summary. It says the last two words are "it also," and you said that was an earlier draft, but I haven't seen anything more recent telling me what was about to be said. That's one question. You left a number of things blank in here in terms of participants who are attending some of these meetings. I also asked how much of this proposed redevelopment area, how many acres are there, and how many of those acres are in the city? And you said there might be about 100 acres that have expired non-annexation agreements, but I'd still like to know how much of it is in the city and how much of it isn't in the city, and if it's not in the city, I guess I'm curious as to why we should be voting on something that's not within the city unless we plan to put it in the city. And then the final question was work on one of the projects. This is a minor point, but you said Sunset Drive is in the 2016 road program, and as we learned earlier tonight, it's really not.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm saying is this detail for me is insufficient for us to really consider this, and I would like to see us think about moving this to our next meeting when all of these points are addressed and we have a fuller understanding of what we're being asked to do.
I'll address your points, Councilmember Peters. At this point, the plan is just a draft. We're not asking for action on it. The kind of the typo you're referencing, there was nothing added. It was really just a typo. So in a later version of that plan, which is not significantly different.
Those two words
yes,
disappeared.
it was probably a thought that wasn't quite completed. But as for the participants that were documented during the public outreach, we're still trying to dig that information up. So that's why that particular area was left blank. There were at least 2 development agreements. The total acreage, I believe it's 2 or 3 development agreements that expired. I'm sorry, 3 non-annexation agreements expired in 2010 and 2012. The total plan area is about 5,000 acres, and these three non-annexation agreements represent about 100 acres of those 5,000 acres.
And the rest of them are in the city limits?
And the rest of this proposed area is within the city limits of New Braunfels.
Do we have any thoughts on what we should do about the areas that have expired non-annexation agreements, if anything?
Well,
maybe that's a question for the city manager, I'm not sure.
We believe that that's a discussion for the council. That's really a finding that came out of this effort, is that once we understood that those development agreements had actually expired, that it kind of highlighted the point that the city has that there are properties kind of like donut holes within this project area that lack the regulatory authority and oversight of the city. So as that area continues to develop, that would be something that the council would consider.
Jeff, this housing project we're talking about,
Yes, sir.
Balcones House,
Yes, sir.
it's right off of Loma Vista, right behind my house, in fact. So they're asking us for support for them to be able to get some funding assistance? Is that simply what they're asking?
Yes, they're asking for I think 3 items, I think broadly. They're asking for the de minimis financial contribution, the resolution of support, and then they were asking the council to consider the adoption of this reinvestment plan for an area that's larger than the area than the particular project that's being proposed. So at that December meeting, we discussed the strategy of basically taking a look at an area that was larger, documenting the findings, documenting what the city has done in the past few years to plan for capital improvements in that area, as well as to show the committed development funding. So that's what we're bringing back to you all tonight. The applicant was requesting some action during the month of February, so we wanted to get in front of the council during the month of January to get feedback on it, to see where we should go, things we should pay particular attention to, or if you all are not interested in pursuing it any further.
So I think that something important to point out is that the cool thing about this reinvestment area is that it appears to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that everything on here are items that we've already had in the works and been planning. So we're not having to commit as a city to future improvements that we hadn't already been planning on. Where sometimes when these projects come in and they ask for a redevelopment plan, they're actually asking the city to commit to some additional projects that may not already be on the books. But that's not the case with this one, right? Because everything on this list is stuff that we were already going to do anyway. We just defined it and put it in a plan.
That's correct. You know, we thought that the strategy of keeping the scope of the area pretty limited. Back in December, you had brought up the Habitat for Humanity plan, and maybe dovetailing that. We think that you know, the scope of their effort is much larger and much broader, and they've got kind of a different complexity and timeline than what's being proposed here. In the qualified allocation plan, it says that the city should have a commitment of funding to undertake these improvements within a certain timeline. Actually, the timeline is by December 31st of 2018. It should have completed these improvements. So we think that what is being represented here with respect to the Morningside, Solms reconstruction, Rickley Road, as well as any other street drainage projects in that area, and as well as Morningside Park. It's not technically in the plan area, but it's close enough and adjacent to it that it should qualify as an expenditure in that particular plan area.
I just want to clarify, the 39 units that are currently senior, are they going to stay that way?
Yes, sir.
Regardless of what happens with the reinvestment zone or area, I mean, not to say someone's just going to voluntarily want to pay city property taxes, but I guess you never know if you don't ask them. So I think regardless of whatever happens, it'd be nice to go back into those property owners to maybe negotiate another non-annexation agreement so we can at least, if it's going to stay for agricultural uses, to protect that from development that we don't want or we can't handle on those roadways right now. So that would be my input.
Those non-annexation agreements were done with farmers in 2004, 2005.
It's been a while, yes, sir.
And they were obligated, if they changed their use, then they would have to deal and go into the city.
Right.
We should probably go back and look at those to make sure that those are updated.
Right.
And we probably have a number of them, if those are falling off, we probably have a number of them over in the Freiheit area as well that need to be.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
I wasn't aware there was
Well,
a terminating.
No, that's absolutely right. I mean, with the discovery of these non-annexation agreements expiring, that's, sort of brought to light the fact that we need to sort of inventory those non-annexation agreements to see where we're at with all of those and whether we're expired, if there are others that are expired, and determining what our next, kind of what our options are moving forward with
By no means am I
those.
suggesting that we tell these generational farmers that they need to be part of the city. I'm just saying we need to review them and renew them,
Understand.
because you don't want that.
And Jeff, is there a timeline that they need a letter of endorsement or support from the city that they're under?
Well, the application deadline is March 1st, so we were thinking that either the February 8th or the 22nd council meeting, this particular project would come up, and then you all heard from a proposed new senior housing development kind of on the other side of town off of Goodwin Lane that they discussed at the last meeting. So that new construction is asking for the two same things. They're asking for the resolution of support as well as the contribution that is quote unquote de minimis or some kind of commitment.
Resolution of support.
Yes.
So, it's my position that I think a resolution of support is well within what we've been discussing. And these projects are a much-needed project, especially in this area. I move that we go ahead and give them a resolution of support.
The only thing today is the reinvestment plan.
The reinvestment plan.
Yes, if this item came back, we would be bringing probably the reinvestment plan back for separate adoption and then considering the other items pertinent to those particular projects.
So all you're asking for tonight is direction from council to move forward with this or vote?
Yes, I mean, I did get some feedback from Councilmember Peters on what we kind of need to flush out here, but if there was anything else, yeah, the change to the Sunset or Street,
Right,
you know,
and
we'll
that's-
make those
That's really a
changes.
minor kind of issue, but we ought to have it correct. I'm not against this plan, I just would like to see it, the detail completed and having all of the documentation that we would need to approve a resolution.
And it would, when it was coming to council for
Yeah.
final adoption.
Okay. Thank you.
Everybody understand?
So we've got plenty of direction that we can come back to the council then, hopefully then on February the 8th, for the adoption of the reinvestment plan as well as a resolution of support.
And that's so that they can get points to get the tax credits?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Drew.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
Okay, we move on to, are we going into executive session?
We can go into executive session to discuss something after this item.
Okay, so I'm going to move on. I'm going to read item Q. Discuss and consider approval of a contract with law firm of Terrell and Waldrop for post-verdict legal services in Carroll West Land Limited versus Yantis and the City of New Braunfels lawsuit, the 2015 case.
Good evening, council. I have
On this particular lawsuit, the 2015 severed claims of Cara West, I had taken the liberty of the authority the city manager has to execute contracts for under $25,000 of retaining the services of Terrell and Waldrop to assist us in our efforts of gathering as much information for the council so that we can navigate our way through this lawsuit as it's winding down. We're anticipating the need to file particular motions that are rather routine in nature, and we we interviewed several firms. This firm was the top selection, and at this point, we're recommending to City Council to go ahead and execute a contract where we would retain their services to assist us in all post-verdict work on the 2015 portion of the Cara West lawsuit.
Any questions of Ms. Acevedo?
Well, I don't have any questions, but my position and speaking for the folks in my district, I think when it comes to being fiscally responsible, I don't think this is the right direction we should be going. I mean, first it starts out with $25,000, then it goes to $50,000, then it's $500,000, and the next thing you know, it's $2 million. That's money that we could be investing in our own infrastructure and other needs that we have. A couple other points is, I think we're taking money out of taxpayers' hands and pockets and putting it in someone else's pockets. And from what I know of economic development, money should stay in the district, in the area that it's in, to turn 7 to 10 times to get a good return on investment. And then thirdly, and my final point is that, back in 1972, when we had the flood here, this town was literally about busted. And there were only a couple of companies that came forth and actually pulled us out of the briar patch. And I think, these companies they're friends of ours. They live here. They go to church here. They hire our local people here. And I think to be going in any kind of legal direction against them really is not something that we should be doing. So those 3 points I'd like to point out here while we're looking at moving forward on this. My people and myself, I say it's a bad use of money, and it's not a good investment for us.
Any other questions of council?
Well, I tend to disagree a little with Councilmember Green. I believe the handwriting's on the wall relative to the fact that we're currently on the hook for some part of 1.2 million, is it, in attorney fees from the case. And the question really, in my mind, that comes to bear is there a chance that an appeal would find errors in the original suit that would cancel out those legal fee requirements that have been imposed at this point in time? And the information I've seen kind of indicates that there certainly seem to be a number of reversible errors that were made in that case. And unless we appeal, and we're not talking about appeal tonight, but we're talking about hiring a firm who can further develop those issues as to whether there are really errors, reversible errors. We have a lot more at stake by not doing it than we do by doing it. So I actually am in favor of hiring this firm.
And I'll remind the council that the majority's wishes were to receive as much information so that you can make the most educated decision as to, not today, but in the near future, as to whether or not to appeal. We're not at that decision point yet. That will be coming up next month. That decision will have to be reached. However, in anticipation of that, and having been bombarded with so many different unique issues in this case, in this litigation, it was imperative that we did retain outside counsel to receive, again, as much information on everything that's occurred thus far in this case, so that the council could make the most informed decision in the future, whether or not to move forward with this case. And so this firm's a tool for the council, if it so wishes, to retain them, to further that effort and before we make a decision and potentially, without enough information. And this council definitely wanted as much information as was available. And this firm is definitely qualified to do that. They have appellate expertise that is intertwined with litigation matters, and they are a very strong law firm with resources that my office simply at this point in time does not have. And it's in the client's best interest to retain, if not this firm, another firm to assist us through this decision process.
Do I hear a
But this is
motion?
my
I
recommendation.
move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to address this item, if you'll please step up to the podium, state your name and address, and please limit it to 5 minutes or less. Well, we do have other rooms, so. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Anyone wishing to address this, we have a motion and a second. I apologize, it's gotten late. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please signify by stating nay.
Nay.
Okay, and you've got that vote count? Okay, and the motion passes. Okay, with that, we'll move on to item 5, executive session. In accordance with the Texas Government Code, Subchapter D, the City Council may convene in a closed session to discuss any of the following items. Any final action or vote will be taken in public. Item A, deliberate issues regarding economic development negotiations in accordance with Section 551.087 of the Texas Government Code, including but not limited to the Walmart Industrial District Agreement. Item B, deliberate pending contemplated litigation, settlement offers, and matters concerning privileged and unprivileged client information deemed confidential by Rule 1.05 of the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct in accordance with Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, specifically Carroll West Land Limited versus Yantis Company and the City of New Braunfels 2010 and 2015 cases. And with that, we'll adjourn to executive session. I need everybody back in. I do have 5? Okay, we're back from executive session. No action or vote has taken place. And without further objection, this meeting is adjourned.